Hey guys, tonight we begin with a life as a worker in a Victorian brothel. Perfumed halls, flickering gaslight, and the creak of footsteps that mean someone's coming again. Your corset pinches, your smile is rehearsed, and the night has only just begun. Behind the velvet curtains, secrets, whispers, and eyes that pretend not to know your name. So, while you're getting comfortable, feel free to tap like and subscribe if this kind of calm, late-night history is your thing. And I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop a comment with your city and what time it was when you pressed play. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The street outside is damp again, the way it always seems to be, no matter what season it is. The fog rolls through the gaslight like it's got business of its own, curling against brick and boot soles, quiet as a breath. You pull your shawl tighter and lift your skirts just enough to keep the hem out of the muck, weaving past a pair of loitering boys and the butcher's delivery cart that hasn't moved since midday. The house is there, just like always, tucked between a clockmaker's shop and a place that claims to sell tobacco. But mostly just houses men who come and go at odd hours with their collars turned up. The brothel doesn't have a sign, of course. That would be too loud, too proud. But you know the way. You always know the way. The gaslight flickers above the door, catching on the brass knocker, though no one uses it. Instead, you step inside quietly, the hinges sighing like they're tired too. The entry smells faintly of sandalwood and lamp oil, a scent that never quite leaves your clothes. There's a long mirror to the left, meant to offer one last chance to check your hair before a client sees it fall apart, and a row of hooks on the wall where cloaks and umbrellas hang like sleeping bats. Your boots are damp from the walk, and the floorboards creak in the same places they always do. The sound follows you like a memory up the staircase. Each step up is its own tiny ritual. The carpet's gone bare in the center, worn down by years of silent shoes and quick retreats. You can feel the rise of the night pressing in already. The air shifts. Upstairs, someone laughs, a thin, bird-like laugh, more practiced than amused. One of the newer girls, maybe. They always start out laughing like that, as if it'll help keep the sharp edges away. You reach the landing and pause. The wallpaper here peels slightly in the corner, right where the frame of a faded seascape always tilts no matter how many times it's straightened. You adjust it out of habit. It doesn't matter, but it's something to do with your hands. Madame's voice filters through the closed door of the parlor, low and firm, like the hum of a cello. She's probably discussing rates again, or maybe lecturing Annie for trying to charge extra without permission. You don't knock. You just keep walking past, shoes soft on the carpet runner, until you reach the long hall that leads to the working rooms. Gas lamps line the corridor, each with its own small hiss and halo. You pass the room with the chipped porcelain basin and cracked window that never quite closes, and then your own, the third door on the right. It smells faintly of rosewater and starch, the latter from the linens that were scrubbed too hard by the girl who does the washing downstairs. She doesn't look you in the eye much anymore. Inside, your room is small but clean. Clean in the way that means someone tried, not that it's new. The bed creaks when you sit on it, and the frame lists slightly to the left. You know this because you've tried to shift it back before, but it always returns to its crooked stance. There's a tin basin in the corner, and a cracked mirror propped against the wall, like a visitor who's overstayed their welcome. You light the lamp on the small table, adjusting the wick until it glows steady, then sit for a moment, letting the silence wrap around you like a second shawl. There's always a pause here, a quiet stretch of time before the first knock, or the first bell, or the first shoe scuffs against the hallway. You breathe in the scent of last night's perfume still clinging to the drapes, and listen to the house shifting around you. The floorboards creak above, likely Rose pacing, the way she does when she's nervous. Someone coughs down the hall. The front door opens and closes again, and the laughter returns, closer this time. You take out your comb and begin pulling it gently through your hair, watching yourself in the mirror with a face that doesn't quite belong to you yet. That face is for later. That's your work face. The one with just enough powder to hide the circles, just enough rouge to hint at life. The room across the hall hosts a new girl now. She arrived 2 nights ago with a cracked valise and a name that changed halfway through the conversation. You don't bother learning it. Not yet. Names shift here the way skirts do, fast and forgettable. What matters is the way she walks, the tilt of her chin, the speed with which she's learning to keep her real self somewhere far behind her eyes. She hasn't figured out the rhythm yet. That's what you're listening for. Always the rhythm. Of footsteps, of voices, of door latches. It tells you more than anything spoken. You move to the wardrobe and open it slowly. Inside are 5 dresses, all stitched by the same woman who pretends not to notice what they're used for. They're clean but faded, like polite lies. You choose the plum-colored one because it's Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, you like to feel just slightly harder to reach. You pull it on, minding the hooks along the back, and fasten the tiny locket around your neck. It has nothing inside. It never did. That's the joke. The hallway outside grows quieter, which means the men have started arriving. They come in clusters, pretending not to notice each other or alone, with hats pulled low and gloves still damp. The parlor fills first, scotch, cigars, polite murmurings of, "How's business tonight?" as if it's a tailor shop. You wait until Madam calls your name. She doesn't shout it. She never shouts. Just says it once, evenly, like a summons. You smooth your skirts and open the door. As you step into the hallway, the gas lights seem a little dimmer than before. Your eyes adjust quickly. They always do. The carpet still feels damp underfoot, but you no longer notice the way the boards shift beneath you. The house exhales around you, one long, silent breath. And as you walk toward the parlor, your back straight and steps even, you think of how many times you've walked the same path, each night identical and completely new. It's the same house, the same hallway, the same faint perfume in the air. But the story always changes the moment you open the door. The parlor never smells quite the same twice. Tonight, it's a cocktail of burnt matches, damp wool coats, a heavy hand of bay rum, and something sweeter, maybe honeysuckle, or a broken bottle of cheap perfume from one of the newer girls. The room is dim, but trying to be elegant, with velvet drapes pulled close to shut out the night, and a few limp flowers in a vase that hasn't been moved since last Thursday. Men sit in armchairs that were once burgundy, and now hover somewhere between wine stain and exhaustion, their boots leaving damp streaks on the carpet, while their eyes do slow circuits around the room. You enter quietly, your shoes making no sound as you cross to your place by the wall, the one near the mirror with the cracked corner. No one's offered you a drink yet, which means they're either cheap, new, or already drunk enough not to care. The other girls drift in as the hour grows later. You nod to Annie, who's wearing too much rouge again, though it suits her in a theatrical sort of way. She grins as she passes, already in character, and leans over the sideboard to pour herself a drink of whatever's left in the bottle, with the smudged label. It's rot-gut gin, of course, the kind that burns like gossip and goes down like punishment. She sips it like it's holy water. You don't bother asking for any. Your stomach remembers last week too well. The room murmurs with conversation. It pretends to be pleasant. A man in a too-tight waistcoat talks loudly about his new job at the exchange, while his friend, bored already, eyes the staircase with a private smile. In the corner, one of the older regulars strokes his mustache and makes a point of not meeting anyone's eyes until someone meets his first. It's a careful dance, all of it. You know it better than anyone here. The order of glances, the tilt of a laugh, The way to make a man feel like the center of the room while quietly counting the coins in his pocket by the cut of his coat. The drinks help, of course, not because they're good, but because they make everyone just a little less real. The men drink to blur the shame, and the girls drink to smudge the edges of the job they didn't think they'd still be doing by this age. You sip water out of a wine glass, the trick you learned early on, how to appear loose without letting go. Annie used to call it keeping your feet when the room starts spinning, though hers have slipped more than once. Everyone's do, eventually. Rumors swirl here thicker than the cigar smoke. You hear one now, trailing in from the hallway, whispered by Lottie as she clutches her shawl and leans into the doorway like a cathedral confessional. She says there's a girl in the next district who got carried off by a client, rich, foreign, maybe Greek, maybe just pretending to be, and now she's living in a house with real curtains and a maid. The others listen with practiced disbelief. You know this story. It's told in every parlor from Shoreditch to Soho. The names change, but the ending stays the same. A golden cage, a silk-lined bed, and a key that never quite fits the lock. Still, some of the younger ones light up at the telling. Even lies offer warmth when it's cold enough. You excuse yourself and slip into the powder room, which is barely more than a closet with a mirror and a chipped sink. The gas sconce above the basin hums like a mosquito, and the heat in the room makes the rouge in your compact slightly runny. You dab it on anyway, painting color back into your face with steady fingers. You never go too heavy. That's Annie's game. Yours is more subtle, soft shadows and a little shine at the eyes. Just enough to look fresh, even when you're not. Your reflection looks tired, but workable. You press your lips together and add a touch of rose to them, blotting with a handkerchief that smells faintly of clove. Back in the parlor, the tempo has shifted. The drunker ones have become louder, the quieter ones more calculating. Madam is making her rounds now, speaking low into a man's ear while her hand hovers lightly at his sleeve, suggesting, implying, negotiating. When she glances your way, it's with a subtle nod. You know what it means. Not yet, but soon. You settle back into your chair and glance at the clock on the mantel. It's not late enough for regret, but it's getting there. A laugh rings out suddenly, sharp, high, and definitely staged. That's Millie. She's sitting too close to a man with pale hands and an accent that's trying not to be Irish. She's holding his attention well, even if her smile's too wide to be real. Across the room, another girl has started to hum softly. A lullaby, maybe, or a tune from the music hall. You can't quite place it, but it fills the corners of the room like warmth, even if it's only pretending. The men begin to make their choices in that slow, casual way that always pretends not to be choosing. One stands and saunters toward a girl near the piano. Another lifts a brow in your direction, and you meet his gaze with a practiced stillness. He's not for you. Not tonight. You can tell by the way his hands fidget and the slight tremor in his voice. Too new. Too nervous. You wait for the right one. The one who will ask your name like it matters, who will smell like cloves and city dust, who will walk with the air of someone accustomed to having doors open for him. You're not sure if you want him to come upstairs or not, but he's the kind that tips well and doesn't linger. Meanwhile, Annie has spilled something on her dress and is dabbing at it with her sleeve. She curses under her breath and mutters something about needing a new bodice. You offer her your kerchief, and she nods in thanks, eyes glancing toward the stairs. Busy night, she says quietly, half smiling. Think we'll make enough to pay the laundry girl extra? You both know the answer, but pretending is its own kind of comfort. There's a knock at the outer door again, followed by heavy footsteps and a sudden hush. You recognize that pattern. It means someone important, or at least someone who thinks he is. The kind who brings expectations and doesn't like to wait. Madam glides toward the entrance as if on rails, her posture perfect, her smile as fixed as the frame on the wall. You watch her, and for a moment, you wonder what she looked like when she first came through that door, before the makeup, before the rings, before her laugh learned to sound like velvet over broken glass. A new bottle is opened. More gin is poured. The laughter rises again, like a song you don't remember the words to. And through it all, you sit still, lips just slightly parted, hands folded in your lap, listening to footsteps, to breath, to the quiet space between sentences. The night is still young, and the stories in this room haven't finished writing themselves yet. You are one of them, always part of the room, never quite belonging to it. Painted, powdered, and perfectly placed for now. The bell doesn't chime like church bells. It clicks, quick, sharp, metallic. A signal, not a song. It comes from a mechanism hidden behind the parlor wall, connected to wires strung through the beams like veins. You hear it while sipping from your empty glass, and it passes through you like a ripple in still water. The sound is unmistakable. It means someone has made their choice. Somewhere in the hallway above, a room has been prepared. A bed's been turned down, a lamp lit, maybe a drop of lavender oil dabbed behind a pillow. One of you is being called. You glance across the room and meet Madame's eye. She gives the faintest incline of her head, barely a movement, but you know it's for you. No name spoken, just the look. Your cue. You rise, steady and smooth, smoothing your skirt as you do. The laughter around you continues undisturbed, as though your departure is just another step in the evening's quiet choreography. You move past the velvet chairs, past the man who just last week said he'd come back for you, but never did, and toward the stairwell that leads up to the rented silence above. As steps creak beneath your feet. Always the third one. Always the seventh. Your hand trails the banister without touching it fully. The hallway upstairs is dimmer than below, the gaslight flickering low to keep the mood gentle, as if soft lighting could make strangers less strange. You walk past closed doors, each with its own history soaked into the wood grain, and find the one that's slightly ajar. Room 4. You know it by feel more than sight. Inside, the lamp burns low, casting warm yellow ovals onto the floral wallpaper. There's a small mirror above the dresser, tilted down just enough that you won't have to see yourself unless you want to. A tray on the side table holds a fresh cloth, a bottle of water, and a half glass of brandy. One sip's worth, not enough to forget, just enough to keep the nerves steady. The bedspread is recently pressed, but the mattress underneath still remembers the weight of every story that's unfolded here. You hear him before you see him. A throat cleared, shoes shifting on the floorboards. The polite rustle of someone trying not to appear too comfortable in a room meant for pretending. When you enter, you find a man standing at the foot of the bed, looking at the curtain instead of you. That's how it usually goes. He wears a neatly buttoned waistcoat and smells of hair pomade and damp wool. His hands are clean. His eyes flick to you, then quickly away. He doesn't smile. You offer your name, not your real one, of course, but the one you use here, the one that sounds just suggestive enough to make the moment easier. He repeats it, quiet, almost reverent, as if tasting it might help him forget whatever name he's left behind. You close the door behind you, and the click echoes louder than it should. Just the two of you now. And the unspoken contract. The moment between introduction and contact stretches long and thin. Sometimes they speak. Sometimes they don't. This one does. He asks if you'd like a drink, though it's your drink, and he's only offering it back to you. You take the brandy in hand, swirl it once, then set it aside untouched. It's a gesture more than anything, a reassurance. You've done this before. He removes his coat, his waistcoat. He hesitates with his boots. You help him carefully, the way you've done 100 times. Each movement precise, each touch featherlight and rehearsed. You don't rush. The illusion of tenderness is as valuable as the act itself. He speaks again, this time softer, about how long the week has been. You nod. You don't need to ask questions. Most of them just want to say it aloud to someone who won't interrupt. When his hands find your waist, they tremble. You let them. You guide him, just enough to make him think he's leading. And as he lowers himself to the bed, you let your expression shift, soft, inviting, a version of empathy that can be worn and removed like a silk ribbon. He closes his eyes. You keep yours open. The minutes that follow blur the way they always do. It's not about the act itself. It rarely is. It's about the space you hold, the person you pretend to be, the version of himself he needs you to reflect. You adjust to the rhythm, to the breath, to the way he exhales when he thinks you're not paying attention. You stay present just enough. It's a strange form of multitasking. Part performance, part protection, part detachment. You know where to place your weight to keep the mattress from groaning. You know how to angle your shoulder to avoid a bruise. You've done this with men who couldn't meet your eyes, and with men who refused to look away. Afterward, he lies back, one arm over his eyes, saying something about the wallpaper or the softness of the sheets. You nod again, let the silence stretch. He doesn't ask anything of you now. That's typical. The need came before. Now there's only aftermath. He reaches for his boots. You hand them to him. He doesn't say thank you, but he doesn't leave in a hurry either. He lingers by the door, adjusting his collar, then says your name, your false, honeyed name, one last time. Like punctuation, like closure. When he's gone, the air changes again. You wait for a full minute before standing, stretching just slightly to roll out the tension in your back. The lamp sputters a little. You cap it and light it again. It steadies. You gather the linens with practiced hands, fold them into the basket by the door, and tug the sheet corners loose for the washer to find later. There's no need to remake the bed. You won't be the last girl in here tonight. You glance in the mirror, almost without thinking. Your hair's a little looser than it was. Your eyes a little more tired. You fix what you can, dabbing a touch of rouge back into your cheeks, blotting away the shine. The face you see isn't broken, just hollowed slightly at the edges, like a candle after it's been blown out. You tie your sash, smooth your dress, and open the door. The hallway receives you like a returning breath. Somewhere, another bell rings. Another girl steps lightly past you without a word. You catch her eye for a moment. A flicker of recognition, or maybe warning. You move toward the stairs again, the creak of the third step welcoming you back like an old friend. The parlor still hums below. The night still waits. There's no applause, no curtain. Just the quiet click of doors opening and closing. Again and again. The sound the door makes when it closes behind a client is not loud. It's not a bang or a slam. It's a small, definitive click. Like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence no one wants to read again. And it's in that moment, when the footsteps fade and the room exhales, that the quiet comes. Not silence exactly. The house never gives you that. There's always the low murmur of voices, the stretch of floorboards, the distant clink of glass downstairs. But this is the hush that settles right after a man leaves, when everything pauses just for a breath. You sit at the edge of the bed, your back straight, hands resting in your lap. You don't reach for anything yet. Not the mirror, not the comb, not the basin. You just sit, blinking slowly, as if your eyes are adjusting not to light, but to truth. The space around you still carries the scent of him, his cologne, his sweat, the faint sourness of nerves. It lingers on the pillow, on the sheets, in your hair. You breathe through your mouth until it fades enough to move. There's a warm cloth near the basin. You dip it in water that's no longer warm, then press it gently to your neck. It's not about cleanliness, not really. It's about reclaiming something. You run the cloth over your chest, your wrists, behind your ears. You don't scrub. That would make it worse. The trick is to do it slowly, like you're erasing chalk from a slate. One small swipe at a time, until the feeling dulls and the skin underneath feels yours again. You change out of the dress. You do it without looking in the mirror. The dress slides off your shoulders and pools at your feet, a puddle of plum-colored fabric that once made you feel powerful. You hang it back in the wardrobe beside the others, each one with its own invisible record of nights like this. Your chemise clings slightly to your back, damp in places where the tension hasn't yet left your body. You stretch your shoulders, one at a time, until the tightness eases. The room is dim now, the lamp flickering low. You don't bother refilling the oil. There's no one to impress between clients. You sit on the bed again and reach for the little wooden box tucked beneath the table. Inside is a book with its spine cracked and its pages soft from handling. It's a romance, badly written, full of cliches, but you've read it 3 times. Not for the story, but for the rhythm. The words flow without asking anything of you. They offer an escape without movement. Outside the window, the street is nearly silent. A carriage passes, its wheels muffled against the damp road. Somewhere, a man shouts, followed by laughter. You press your fingers to the glass. It's cold. You imagine stepping through it, out into the night, walking without a name, without rouge, without the sound of your own voice saying yes when you want to say anything else. But then the floor creaks in the hall, and the spell breaks. You are still here, still behind the door that just clicked shut. The girls down the hall are speaking in hushed tones. You can't make out the words, but the cadence is familiar. They're comparing notes, clients, habits, tips, and warnings. It's an old game. You used to join in more often, before you learned that sharing too much can cost you. Now you keep your thoughts closer. Safer that way. Let them think you're mysterious. Or cold. Both work. You lie back on the bed, arms above your head, staring at the ceiling where the plaster is cracking in thin, lazy lines. You trace them with your eyes, finding shapes in the decay. A bird, a river, a key. You close your eyes. The key sticks. It's always the same. A key to something. Out, away. Even just to a quiet place where no one needs you to be anything at all. A mattress is still warm, not from you, from him. The imprint of his presence lingers longer than it should. You shift to the other side, the cool side, the safe side. You listen to your own breath for a while. Count the seconds between heartbeats. You're not trying to sleep, just resting, just floating in the quiet space between appointments. You think of your real name for a moment, the one no one here knows. It's not a special name, not poetic or noble, but it's yours. And it feels oddly fragile when you think of it in this room, like something left in a drawer too long, now too delicate to wear. You picture the street you grew up on, the sound of your mother's voice, the first time you held a comb in your hand and tried to make yourself look older. You succeeded. Too well, it turns out. Someone knocks, 3 soft taps on the door. Not a client, not yet. Just the laundry girl, signaling that she's collecting. You open the door a crack and pass her the linen bundle without speaking. She nods and disappears. You almost thank her. Almost. You light a new lamp, this one smaller, meant for reading. Its glow spills softly across the bed, making the cracks in the wall look golden instead of gray. You pick up the book again. The heroine is about to fall in love with a man who doesn't deserve her. You almost envy her for not knowing that yet. There's comfort in this pocket of time. Between doors clicking and bells ringing, there's this, a moment of being still, being whole. You don't have to perform. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to smile unless you want to. You can just be a girl with tired feet and calloused hands, wrapped in a blanket that still smells faintly of starch and lavender. You take a slow sip of water. It's slightly warm, but it helps. You pull the shawl from the hook by the mirror and wrap it around your shoulders. The fabric is soft from use. The edges frayed where your fingers tend to tug. It grounds you, reminds you of nothing and no one in particular. Just now, just this. The night continues elsewhere in the house, full of sounds and secrets, footsteps and whispers. But in this room, for now, there is only quiet. The kind that doesn't ask questions. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. You close the book, set it aside, and close your eyes again. Not to sleep, not yet, but just to hold on to this brief, fragile peace before the bell rings again. You hear it first in the shift of voices downstairs. Laughter dies off too quickly. Glass clinks, but no one follows it with a toast. The kind of hush that isn't silence. Exactly. Just everyone pretending they weren't speaking quite so loudly a moment ago. Then comes the sound of the front door creaking open, followed by the heavy click of a walking stick on tile. Even without looking, you know who it is. Not the man himself. Perhaps it's hard to keep track of which one the city's sent now. But you know the type. The inspector. You're already standing by the dresser, brushing a wrinkle from your sleeve that no one would notice but you. When Madame's footsteps rise up the stairs with a little more weight than usual, there's no knock. Just the door swinging open, her silhouette sharp against the hallway light. Company, she says with a look that isn't quite annoyance and isn't quite fear. You nod, of course. That means it's time to sit in the parlor again, to play polite, to smile like nothing's amiss. You tighten your sash and follow her down, your feet silent, your breath measured. The inspector doesn't wear a uniform. They rarely do. He's dressed like a man who wants to look respectable, but not wealthy. Plaid waistcoat, wool coat, gloves tucked into his hat on the table beside him. He's older, with a face like cracked leather and a mustache that seems to have survived more than he has. He's sitting in the armchair nearest the fire, pretending to warm his hands, but really just waiting to be noticed. You and the other girls file in one by one, quiet as a church pew. He doesn't look at you yet. He's waiting for Madame to say her part first. She greets him with that particular blend of civility and calculation she's perfected over the years, her voice warm, her smile fixed. Inspector, how nice of you to drop in. He nods, then makes a point of glancing at the clock. Routine, he says. Just keeping order. Everyone knows what that means. It means he'll stay for a drink, maybe two. He'll ask a few questions he doesn't care to hear the answers to. Then he'll take what he came for, money, usually. Or something else, depending on his mood. Madame gestures to Annie, who heads to the sideboard and pours a small glass of the good brandy, the kind reserved for nights like this. She hands it over without a word. The inspector takes it without thanks. He starts talking, not about the house, no, not directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, he talks about a fire in Clockenwell, about unrest at the docks, about the latest clampdown on unlicensed houses of entertainment. He never says the word brothel. Too crass, even for him. But the meaning settles over the room like smoke. You stand behind the chaise, hands clasped lightly in front of you, eyes fixed just past his shoulder. You're not afraid. Not exactly, but the game changes when the inspector comes. It's no longer just about performance for cooing. It's about survival in a house where the law doesn't protect you. It watches, tallies, judges, and collects. The inspector's eyes flick to you now, just briefly. A glance, a measure. New girl, he says. Madame shakes her head. She's been with us a while. Quiet one, he grunts. You stay still. You've learned it's best to be unremarkable in moments like this. To be neither too pretty nor too forgettable. Just the right shade of invisible. He sets his glass down and leans back in the chair. We've had complaints, he says. Noise, late hours. Unsavory characters loitering nearby. Madam sighs, the kind of sigh that says she's heard this script before. We run a quiet house, she replies. No trouble from us. He shrugs. Even so. That's when she reaches for the envelope. It's always an envelope. Folded, discreet, slightly worn at the corners. She offers it like a hostess offering a menu. He doesn't take it right away. That would be too obvious. Instead, he talks a little longer. About the new magistrate. About the pressure from the temperance leagues. About how difficult it is to keep the peace when everyone wants something from you. Then he takes the envelope. There's a silence afterward, like a room waiting for a curtain to fall. He tucks it into his coat with a practiced flick of the wrist. I'm sure I'll find everything in order, he says, standing slowly. The girls nod politely. You murmur something that might be, yes, Inspector, though your voice is barely audible. He adjusts his coat, places his hat neatly on his head, and walks toward the door. But he pauses. Just before stepping outside, he turns back. Be careful, he says to Madam. There's always someone watching. You may keep things tidy, but not everyone is so reasonable. Then he leaves, the door clicking shut behind him like the end of a performance. The room doesn't relax right away. Not until his footsteps fade completely and someone peeks through the curtain to make sure he's really gone. Madam exhales. Well, she says, that's that. Annie makes a face. He's worse than the last one. You nod faintly, though it's hard to tell anymore. They're all the same in the end. Polite men with cold hands and warm threats. You return to your chair, your spine aching from standing so still. The room begins to stir again, voices rising cautiously, like birds after thunder. Later, in your room, you think about what he said, that someone is always watching. It's not a new thought. You've known it since your first night here. You carry it with you like a shadow, in the glance of a stranger on the street, in the flick of a curtain, in the way people talk to you with smiles that never reach their eyes. Still, it lingers more than usual tonight. Maybe because his warning was real, or maybe because the envelope felt lighter than last time. Money's tighter these days, and when money's tight, safety stretches thin. You lie back on the bed and stare at the ceiling again. The cracks look deeper somehow, or maybe it's just the lamp flickering differently. You close your eyes and imagine a world without doors that open for inspectors. A world where the only knocks come from friends, and the only envelopes passed are filled with letters, not bribes. You know better, of course, but still, you imagine it. The sky is pale gray when you step outside, the kind of morning that feels like it never quite let go of the night. Street lamps flicker off one by one, and the gaslight haze gives way to a thin, damp mist. Your shoes click softly on the stones, the sound swallowed by the city's slow awakening. The livery carts creaking, a paperboy's shout, a coal fire catching somewhere behind a shuttered shop. You wrap your shawl tight, not for warmth, but for modesty, and walk past last night's laughter, now scattered like crumbs behind you. The air tastes like smoke and yesterday's rain. A man passes you without meeting your eyes. That's the rule. Everyone sees, but no one looks. You keep your pace even, your expression still. When you reach your door, you pause just briefly to listen. Not for anything in particular, just the quiet hum of survival. You'll sleep until the sun is high, and wake to do it all again. But tonight's story was hardly the only one playing out behind closed doors. Across the channel, another woman moves through gaslight and silk, carving her legend in champagne and scandal. Let's meet her. You're not born into the world you'll one day command. You're born Eliza Emma Crouch, daughter of a struggling cellist, and a woman who irons clothes for money, in a neighborhood where women's futures hang like laundry, visible, worn thin, and rarely new. From an early age, You understand that beauty is a form of currency, and yours gathers interest. You learn to read faces before books, to smile just so, to charm coin out of strangers with your eyes. But charm alone won't buy freedom, and you want more than the same warm shoes, the same cold porridge, the same cramped room in Covent Garden. The first time a man offers to take care of you, you don't say no. You don't say yes either. You just let the door open a little wider. He's older, smells faintly of gin and sandalwood, and talks as if you're a painting he's just acquired. He takes you to a better part of London, and for the first time you see rooms that belong to someone else, but feel like a dream. Silk curtains, a dressing mirror taller than you, a meal served without asking. You tell yourself it's temporary. You're right, but not for the reason you think. It doesn't last, of course. It never does, not at this stage. Men like that always tire of girls who want something. You leave with a bruised pride and enough coins to buy a train ticket. Across the channel, Paris waits, not with open arms, but with possibilities. You step off the train into a city that smells of roasted chestnuts and wet stone, where the streets curve like secrets and the women walk like they invented desire. You speak barely a word of French, but you learn quickly. You learn everything quickly now. The woman you were, Eliza, doesn't fit here. Her accent is too coarse, her expectations too low. So you invent someone new. Cora, short, mysterious, elegant. Cora Pearl, sweetness wrapped in treasure. It sounds theatrical, like the star of a play, and you decide you will be one, in your own way. You practice the name silently in the mirror, letting it settle on your lips like a ribbon. Each day, you wear it more easily. Each night, it feels less like a costume. At first, you do what you must. There are small rooms, cold mornings, and the awkward learning curve of playing your part. You observe the courtesans who've already claimed space in the city's imagination, how they enter a room half a second slower than expected, how they speak in riddles, how they never stay too long. You mimic, you improvise, you begin to stand out, not just because you're beautiful, plenty are, but because you know how to leave a space better than you found it, and more importantly, how to leave people wondering. You meet a man who introduces you to salons, another who introduces you to champagne. You decide you prefer the latter. They talk to you as if your silence is a mystery worth solving, and you let them believe it. You're witty when needed, quiet when strategic, dazzling always. You laugh like someone who's never had a reason not to, and soon they believe you. The rooms improve. The gowns grow softer. The compliments more generous. You stop waiting for invitations and start being expected. People begin to mention your name in conversations not meant for your ears. Have you seen her? She arrived late and still stole the evening. They say she bathes in champagne. She made the Duke beg and then left anyway. Gossip becomes your calling card. You feed it delicately, offering just enough truth to keep the myth alive. And soon, the city knows you. Not just as a pretty face, but as Cora Pearl. Men send you violets with unsigned cards. Women send you glances packed with curiosity and caution. You are no longer climbing, you are seated, observed, envied, feared. You develop a taste for theater, not just as a spectator, but as the performance itself. You once walked into a ball in a sheer silver gown, stitched with real pearls, hair piled like a sculpture, and the room stopped breathing. That's when you knew you had become the story. With status comes control, and with control comes a different kind of danger. Patrons fall in love with the idea of you. They want to own the illusion, but you never let them. You rotate your lovers like seasons, each given their moment, each knowing they are not the last. You do not allow attachment. Attachment is a thread that can unravel the entire gown. You keep your heart behind a glass wall, safe, untouched. Most don't even notice you have one. One offers marriage. Another offers a villa. A third offers both. plus a string of racehorses and a title. You smile, decline, not because you lack desire, but because you refuse to become a footnote in someone else's story. You've read too many of those. They never end well. You'd rather fade on your own terms. You begin to write poetry in secret, little verses tucked between invitations and unpaid bills. Sometimes, late at night, you read them aloud to yourself, voice soft, the words like fingerprints on a fogged mirror. There is a loneliness to success, but you learn to carry it well. A new girl enters the scene, young, eager, already copying your hairstyle. You help her with her corset laces one night, whispering advice like spells. She thanks you too much. You know she'll forget your kindness the moment she's invited to a richer salon. That's fine. That's the cycle. Still, there are moments that stay with you. The quiet after a gala, sitting alone at your window, powdered skin still glowing under candlelight. A snowfall that catches in your hair on a way back from the theater. The sound of your own name in a man's mouth when he doesn't yet know how dangerous it is to love you. These are your treasures. More real than diamonds, which are pawned and repurchased more often than your gowns. And yet, Eliza never disappears completely. Sometimes she visits in dreams, young and barefoot, curious and unsmoothed. Sometimes she slips through your expression when you aren't watching. And once, when you trip slightly stepping out of a carriage, it is her name you almost curse under your breath. You laugh it off, but you feel her still, buried beneath layers of silk and artifice. You wonder if she'd be proud, or frightened, or just tired. But the world remembers Cora Pearl. That is what matters now. Your name is engraved in invitations, murmured in salons, printed, sometimes scandalously, in the papers. You've escaped the world that tried to raise you in its image, and instead made one of your own. A softer, sharper, glittering illusion with teeth. And as the candles burn low and Paris exhales into night, you sit by the fire in your finest room, brushing your hair with slow, precise strokes. Not to seduce, not to prepare, just to remind yourself that you are still here, still in control, still the author of a life no one else could have written. Whatever comes next, whether rise or fall, whether applause or silence, you will face it as Cora Pearl. And no one, not even Eliza, can take that from you. It begins, as most things do in your world now, with a request that is half a dare. One of your admirers, a count, or perhaps just someone who inherited the title like an umbrella, asks you what it would take to make you smile in a way that isn't rehearsed. You lean close across the velvet chaise, your voice low enough to be mistaken for a secret, and say, "Fill my bath with champagne." It's not a serious demand. It's a line, a performance. But he takes it seriously. The next evening, you step into your bathing chamber to find the tub full, the surface golden and bubbling like a festival. The scent is unmistakable, grapes and decadence. No soap, no salt, just indulgence, cold and sharp against your skin. You undress slowly, not because anyone is watching, but because it feels like something sacred. You slip into the bath, and for a moment, it stings. Not from pain, but from absurdity. You laugh, truly laugh, and the sound echoes off the marble walls like glass being tapped. That night, the papers whisper of it, though no journalist was ever present. The champagne bath becomes a legend, just like you. From that point on, excess becomes your language. You no longer just exist in rooms, you redefine them. Your bedroom ceiling is painted with clouds, the plaster edges trimmed in gold leaf. The curtains are damask, the kind that hush light without erasing it, and your sheets are so soft that even sleep moves more gently across them. You install a chaise not to sit on, but to place things on, fans, gloves, a fur muff you once wore to a summer ball just to make a point. You commission mirrors with beveled glass that stretch from floor to ceiling. You tell the glassmaker you want to see every angle of yourself when you enter the room. as though you are the art. The salon becomes your stage. You design it like a theater, complete with a fainting couch near the fireplace and a gold-trimmed harp you never play. You fill shelves with books you'll never read, their titles chosen for aesthetics. A small ivory elephant from the Orient sits on the mantel, right beside a bronze of Venus, and visitors comment on both as if they understand your taste. You let them believe they do. At your soirees, guests arrive in silk-lined carriages, their invitations written in your hand, flourishes and all. The walls echo with laughter, the air thick with cigars and layered perfumes. You glide through the gathering with a practiced grace, your gown whispering across parquet floors. Sometimes you wear pink satin embroidered with seed pearls. Other times, ivory tulle with real diamonds sewn into the hem. Once, for a masquerade, you wore nothing but a sheer robe and a crown of lily, daring everyone to speak and no one to say what they saw. You didn't win a prize. You didn't need one. But opulence isn't only in the clothes and the furniture. It's in the way you move, the way you let people wait for you. You arrive late to dinners. You leave early from plays. You cancel lunches by sending a handwritten note and a box of sugared violets. When you visit the opera, you sit in your private box and look down on the crowd as if they've come to see you. And in some ways, they have. You've become your own performance. Your life is the show. Still, every palace needs guards, and yours are invisible. You have rules, ones you never speak aloud. You never dine with clients unless they beg. You never repeat a gown unless it's been redesigned. You never show fatigue, no matter how late the night or how long the game. You keep your voice even. You smile with your mouth, not your eyes. And above all, you never let them believe they own you, even when they're paying for the illusion that they do. Some say you are rude. Others call you impossible. You let them. The ones who matter call you irresistible. And more importantly, they call you first. One admirer gifts you a golden bathtub, actual gold, heavy as sin and shaped like a lion's mouth. You have it installed in your dressing room, not because it's practical, but because it's absurd. Another sends you a collection of parrots in a custom cage. They scream your name at random, which you find hilarious for a week, and then tiresome. You send them to a cousin of his. He doesn't ask for them back. A Russian prince delivers 12 trunks of furs, one winter, mink, sable, fox, each with matching muff and boots. You wear the mink to the bakery just to feel the fur brush against the crusty loaves. A man offers you a necklace once owned by a Habsburg duchess. You wear it to a luncheon, then lock it away. Sometimes you take it out and hold it to the light, just to remind yourself that power doesn't always look like iron. Sometimes it's strung in pearls and meant to be worn with laughter. Your staff expands. There's a girl whose only job is to keep your slippers warm near the fire. A man who presses your gloves. A maid who refills your scent bottles and never asks questions. They know better. You pay well, in coin and in silence. You treat them kindly, though never familiarly. You've learned the dangers of blurred lines. They all call you Madame. Never Cora, never Eliza. Those names live in different parts of the house, behind different doors. Of course, opulence has a cost. The bills come faster now. Soirees aren't cheap, and expectations inflate with fame. But you manage. You always have. Sometimes, when funds grow tight, you part with something quietly. A diamond bracelet no one's seen in months. A chair that never fit the room. You don't feel it. Or rather, you choose not to. And there are nights when even your rooms feel too full. When the furniture gleams too hard, and the silence between parties stretches too long. You pour yourself a glass of something sweet and sit by the window, watching carriages pass below. You don't envy them. But you do wonder what it might be like to walk those streets without being recognized. To slip into a crowd without anyone turning their head. You never linger on the thought. It's dangerous. You return to your bath, or your chaise, or your piano, and remind yourself why you built all this in the first place. Once, you walk barefoot through your salon after a gala, your gown discarded in a heap behind you. The floor is cold, the lights dimmed, the air still carrying the scent of lily and champagne. You run your fingers across the harp strings. They hum, faintly. You smile. This is yours, all of it. Not because you were given it, but because you took it. Because you demanded more and dared to enjoy it. You climb the stairs, slowly, the hem of your robe brushing each step like a whisper. In your chambers, you light one candle, just one, and undress without looking in the mirror. You slip beneath the silk sheets and close your eyes, and for a moment, not long, you let the silence be real. Tomorrow, there will be callers, letters, expectations, but tonight, there is just you, and the soft glow of gold catching on the walls. The morning light filters into your chamber through damask curtains drawn carefully the night before, leaving the room in a dim, flattering haze. You are already awake, not because the hour demands it, but because your mind has been turning for some time now. Sleep in your world is shallow, not from nightmares, but from maintenance, the kind of unconscious effort required to keep your mask from slipping, even in dreams. The bed is soft, the linens fragrant with lavender, and the sheets silk-lined, yet comfort has long ceased to be the goal. You sit up with a slow, measured breath, one hand smoothing over your hair, and glance toward the tall mirror near the fireplace. It reflects not just your figure, but the performance you'll resume in a few short hours. By the time your maid arrives with the bathwater, you're already wrapped in your morning robe, waiting. She doesn't speak unless you do, which you rarely do before bathing. The silence isn't cold, it's trained. She pours the water slowly into the polished tub, checking the temperature with a careful hand before stepping back. When she leaves, you slip out of the robe and lower yourself into the bath with the poise expected of someone who has spent years learning to move beautifully, even when no one is watching. The heat calms your limbs, but not your thoughts. There are 2 dinners this week that you must attend. One you must cancel with enough flair to make the absence feel intentional, and a ball you can no longer afford to avoid. There's a new girl being whispered about, young, bold, and conveniently imitating your silhouette. You do not worry, but you make a note. When you rise from the water, the air bites gently against your skin. The towel is warm, as it always is, and you allow yourself a brief moment of stillness as your maid dries your hair with the delicacy of a woman who knows she's dressing not just a person, but a persona. The day's garments have been selected already. A soft lilac dress with pearl buttons and matching gloves, subdued enough for the morning, but cut well enough to remind anyone watching that your elegance is not accidental. As your corset is fastened, you feel the familiar pressure bloom across your ribs and waist. It pinches more today, likely from the faint bruise left by last night's velvet brocade gown. You do not comment. Pain, in this life, is only acknowledged in lace-thin layers of humor and deflection. Breakfast is light, as always. A slice of toasted bread, a perfectly cut pear, and black coffee served in fine porcelain. You read correspondence while you eat, the letters stacked neatly to the left of your plate. A man from Vienna writes with vague sentiment and a clearer proposition. Another from Marseille includes a poem so overwrought that it might as well have been copied from a theater program. A third is unsigned and likely harmless, though you pass it to your secretary for safekeeping. Every note you receive, every bouquet, gift, or whispered compliment carries a weight you must measure carefully. Your responses are strategic, your silences even more so. The day proceeds with a rhythm you have orchestrated down to the smallest beat. There is a brief visit to your milliner to approve a new hat, a stop at your preferred boutique to review fabrics for an upcoming commission, and a fitting in your drawing room where 2 seamstresses fuss around your arms and hips while murmuring praise. You remain gracious, but distracted. Tonight's dinner party will include two men whose fortunes are in question, and one whose affections you need to redirect towards someone less persistent. It's delicate work, this negotiation of presence and distance. You cannot be too warm, lest you invite assumptions. You cannot be too cold, lest you risk being replaced. And so you strike the perfect balance, again and again, with a smile that rests at the exact angle required. As the sun lowers, you retreat briefly to your chamber. Your feet ache, though the slippers were new, and your temples carry the first signs of tension behind your eyes. You sit for a moment, alone, and allow your body to settle before the next layer of artifice is applied. Evening means transformation. Your hair is restyled, your bodice tightened, your skin dusted with powder, your cheeks kissed with rose tint. You don't speak during the process, not because you are unkind, but because maintaining the illusion takes energy best conserved in silence. The dinner party begins just after 8. You arrive at 8:30. Your carriage is announced at the door by name, your cloak taken, your presence observed, like the passing of a comet. You glide into the room with that practiced grace that feels so natural. Now you barely think of it. The host smiles too widely. The guests nod too quickly. You are seated between two gentlemen, both familiar, both eager. One speaks of politics, the other of sculpture. You give each just enough attention to feel rewarded, but not enough to feel special. Throughout the meal, you sip wine, but never enough to loosen your tongue. Your laughter is generous, yet economical. You never share stories. You ask just enough questions. You always know when to excuse yourself. By the time you return home, your gown still fresh and your composure untouched, it is nearly midnight. The salon is quiet. The lamps are low. You remove your earrings first, then the corset, loosening each tie with the care of someone unwrapping something delicate. You pause in front of the mirror again, searching for any sign of what the evening cost. You find it, just slightly, in the tight line between your brows. You smooth it out with your fingers. That's all it takes. Cora pearl, perfect again. You know, of course, that this life cannot be lived without cost. Your fortune is maintained by the illusion of effortlessness. But beneath it lies a relentless pressure, one that tightens like a cinch at the waist. You've become a figure adored, envied, imitated, and dissected. And though they all want to be near you, none of them know you. That is your choice. That is your armor. But it is also your cage. There are times you remember Eliza, not often, and never aloud. But in rare moments of exhaustion or silence, you think of the girl who once sat on the edge of a London bed, her dress threadbare and dreams unformed. You wonder if she would understand this life you've made, if she would be proud or appalled, or perhaps just amazed that you managed to outrun the gravity of your origin. You do not regret the performance. You built it. You refined it. You mastered it. And yet, there are nights when you sit by the fire in your chambers, still in full makeup, slippers discarded, a glass untouched on the table beside you, and you feel a kind of ache not located in any one part of your body. An ache that whispers not of failure, but of emptiness, not of loss, but of weight. It is the cost of being seen without ever being known. The price of performance is not just exhaustion. It is invisibility under 1,000 eyes. And still, when morning comes, you will rise again, not because you are forced, but because you refuse not to. You will dress, you will smile, you will glide, because the role is yours, and you perform it better than anyone ever could. The first whisper arrives not in the papers, but in a dining room. You're seated between a financier and a visiting English baronet, delicately turning your spoon through a bowl of clear consomme when a hostess with an eager gleam leans across the table and says, with mock concern threaded delicately into her voice, "I do hope that ghastly little rumor about you isn't true." You look up, poised and calm, as if you haven't heard the same rumor already from 3 other sources in 3 other rooms. You smile gently, thank her for her interest, and change the subject to the new ballet at the opera. But the damage has already been done. The whisper has found another listener. The city feeds on gossip, the way it feeds on sugar and scandal. And lately, your name has appeared in more mouths than invitations. It's not the first time, of course. Whispers have always circled around you like perfume, but this time they're sharper, more eager. The story shifts each time you hear it. Something about a broken contract, or an insult at a dinner, or a lover who was discarded too publicly, too cruelly. The details don't matter. What matters is that the city smells blood. You try to ignore it at first. After all, you've survived more than rumor. You've turned it to your advantage before, fanned the flames just enough to keep yourself warm without catching fire. But this time, the embers catch. People begin to speculate aloud. The papers, once allies in myth-making, start to grow teeth. A cartoon appears, just a line drawing in the corner of a scandal sheet. But you recognize the profile, the way the woman holds her fan too high, shielding a smirk. It's you, unmistakably, being escorted from a salon with her head held high and her skirts trailing mud. The calls slow, the invitations shrink. A few of your closest allies, those who had once fawned and flirted and sworn eternal amusement in your company, begin to develop selective memories. They forget to send notes. They're suddenly out of town. When you arrive at the opera, your box still gleaming with fresh flowers, you feel the glances shift. Not away, but toward you. Too fast, too eager, too rehearsed. You are still being watched, but now as spectacle, not as centerpiece. You try to contain it. You double your appearances. You host a supper so dazzling in its decor that the chandelier alone is discussed for 3 days afterward. You commission a new portrait, more austere, more refined, and send copies to the salons where the gossip grows thickest. But none of it lands quite right. The atmosphere has changed. You haven't lost your beauty, or your wit, or your gowns. You've lost your untouchability. The worst of it comes not in public, but in private. A letter arrives from a banker you'd known for years. Once a suitor and a friend, now something colder. He regrets, he writes, that he cannot continue to associate with you socially due to recent unfortunate complications to your public reputation. You read the letter once, slowly, then again, faster. Then you fold it in half and burn it without a word. But later that night, seated at your dressing table with your hair half pinned and the lamplight flickering against the mirror, the sentence returns. Complications to your public reputation, as though you were a spill on a tablecloth, as though you could be removed with enough scrubbing. You begin to retreat, not in defeat, but in reservation. The rooms you once filled so effortlessly feel smaller now, more echoing. You avoid the salons where the most venomous tongues gather. You decline invitations not with apologies, but with icy brevity. You go walking earlier in the day, before the carriages have finished their routes, when the streets belong to bread sellers and yawning florists. You wear veils more often. You lower your voice in conversations. You give the city fewer chances to twist your expressions into narrative. Still, the gossip persists. Now it has a rhythm, a shape. People say you've lost your fortune, that you're hiding a scandal, that you insulted the wrong man or offended the wrong wife, or grew too bold, too rich, too visible. There is a kind of perverse satisfaction in watching a woman like you stumble. You know it. You feel it in the glances that hover a second too long on your sleeve, looking for signs of wear. In the smiles that arrive with just enough delay to feel performative. They are waiting for you to fall, and yet you don't. Not fully. Not yet. You pare things back with elegance. You sell a few gowns quietly to a discreet buyer who resells them under someone else's name. You let one maid go. You cancel 2 soirees. You tighten your accounts and send 3 patrons well-phrased letters of thanks and farewell. There is dignity in the retreat, if done correctly. There is power in choosing when and how to disappear from a room. What stings the most is not the cruelty, but the hypocrisy. Many of the women now whispering about your supposed decline once begged for your tailor's name. Many of the men now crossing your name off guest lists once wept in your presence. Their change of heart is not principled, it is strategic. You have become too visible in the wrong way. The spotlight that once elevated you now exposes you, and that makes them nervous. You begin to dream of quieter places. Villas far from the city, walks beside silent rivers, a life without social chess. You imagine mornings without corsets, evenings without curated conversation. You think occasionally of returning to England, not to the life you left behind, that is long gone, but to something smaller, something earned. But the thought doesn't last. Even now, even with your name twisted in paper and rumor, Paris is still your stage. You cannot leave it to echo with your absence. Not yet. In the meantime, you work harder at being unseen. You wear darker gowns, quieter shoes. You take a second-floor flat, smaller, more discreet, and decorated in pale blues and silvers, not gold. It's beautiful, but muted. When visitors come, they are welcomed politely, but the sparkle is gone. You are gracious, but detached. They call it melancholy. They're wrong. It's strategy. One evening, while returning from a dinner where you were seated too far from the fire and too close to the gossiping daughters of a marquis, you stop your carriage early and walk the rest of the way home. The night is misty, the city glowing at the edges. As you cross a small bridge, you pause and look over the side. The Seine flows below, indifferent to scandal or spectacle. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine what it would be like to simply vanish, to let the city forget your name, your face, your myth, to become a story someone once heard and half remembers. But then you straighten your shoulders, adjust your gloves, and continue walking. You are not finished. Not yet. The mask doesn't fall all at once. It begins to slip in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when no one is paying to be enchanted. It slips in the hush of your new flat, where the furniture is fewer and the rooms echo faintly when you move through them. Gone are the harp and the velvet drapes, the enormous bed that swallowed your evenings like theater curtains. In their place, smaller chairs, older rugs, and a writing desk you use more often than you expected. You tell yourself the simpler space is restful, easier to maintain, more appropriate for the season. But you know the truth. The mask has grown heavier, and you can no longer afford to carry it all the time. There is no dramatic collapse, no ruined ball, no dramatic headline announcing your fall from grace. The city simply stops revolving around you. The letters that once came daily now arrive in soft trickles. The packages wrapped in satin ribbons are replaced by thin envelopes bearing polite regrets. You are still recognized, still addressed with the proper courtesies. But the urgency is gone. The spotlight that once followed you has found another figure to chase. You begin to leave the house without your corset. Not often, and never in daylight. But some afternoons, when the clouds are heavy and the streets quiet, you slip out in simpler clothes and allow your body to move in its own rhythm. Your walk is slower now, not out of defeat, but out of absence. An absence of performance, of need, of someone watching from across the boulevard. The shoes pinch less. The gloves stay folded in your coat pocket. You find that you breathe more easily, though the breaths are tinged with something you don't name. Some evenings, you sit at your window with a cup of lukewarm tea and listen to the street below. Not for gossip or footsteps, but for the small sounds, the clatter of wheels over cobblestone, the bark of a far-off dog, the soft trill of a violin from a cafe nearby. You used to fill silence with attention, with opulence, with music played to earn glances. Now you allow it to be just that, silence, stillness, unmarred. Not dramatic, not beautiful, simply present. Your wardrobe shifts in kind. The gowns remain folded in trunks, though you no longer open them. Instead, you wear simpler dresses, sleeves less adorned, necklines less bold. The woman in the mirror still holds herself upright, still steps with intention, but the curve of the lips is no longer measured. The hair is still styled, though not for seduction. And when you look into your own eyes, you find that the expression you wore for so long has changed without your permission. It's no longer invitation, it's observation. You are watching the world now, rather than inviting it to watch you. The friends who remain few but loyal do not ask questions. They visit in the afternoon, bring sweets or books, and speak of plays and politics. They do not mention the parties you no longer attend. They do not comment on the absence of servants or the shift in your signature. One brings a letter from a former patron, one of the few who never demanded too much. He asks how you are. You do not answer. You do not need to. One morning, you find yourself seated at your dressing table, hair unpinned, face bare. There is no mirror in this room. Not anymore, but your reflection remains somewhere in your mind, layered over years of painted lips and powdered cheeks. You reach into the drawer and remove a locket once gifted in the first flush of your Paris life. Inside, there is no portrait, just a pressed flower, faded to near colorless gray. You remember the day it was given to you. Not for its extravagance, it wasn't that, but for the way the man looked at you when he handed it over, as if he believed you were something sacred. That man is long gone. The locket is not. You close it carefully and set it back in the drawer. You still receive invitations now and then. Smaller affairs. Polite suppers. Gallery openings where your presence would be noted but not announced. Sometimes you go out of curiosity, out of memory. You walk in quietly, your name still recognized, but no longer on everyone's lips. You speak when spoken to. You sip your drink slowly. You allow yourself to sit by the window instead of commanding the center of the room. You smile without showing your teeth. And yet, despite the withdrawal, despite the distance, despite the layers of glamour you've let fall away, the city never quite forgets. You see it in the way strangers glance twice when you pass. You hear it in the way shopkeepers pronounce your name, careful, cautious, reverent. You were once a legend. Legends don't vanish. They fade into the edges of paintings, into the footnotes of songs, into the whispers that carry from one generation of hopeful girls to the next. Sometimes you hear your name misused. Cora Pearl, they say, was once the most desired woman in Paris, a courtesan who bathed in champagne and wore diamonds to breakfast. A woman who fell from grace because she asked too much, lived too brightly, took too many liberties. The details are wrong, always. The tone is off. But you let it pass. You have no interest in correcting history. You've already lived it. One evening, long after the last of your creditors have been paid, long after the last velvet ribbon has been folded away, you stand on your balcony and watch the city at dusk. The rooftops are warm with fading sun, and the bells from St. Sulpice toll faintly through the haze. You no longer expect anything from Paris. Not admiration, not forgiveness, not even memory. But still, you stand there, head high, hands resting lightly on the iron railing, and breathe in the same air you once rolled. You do not wear the mask now, not even a trace. Your face is your own again, and your body answers to no schedule but its own. You are older, you are quieter, but you are still Cora, in a way that matters. Not the Cora who walked into salons and stopped conversations. Not the Cora who laughed at the edge of scandal, but the Cora who survived it all, who saw through every glance and rumor and promise, and came out the other side, not broken, but whole in a way that few ever become. The mask is gone, but you remain. You walk without purpose now. Not aimlessly, never that. but without a destination to impress or a name to announce upon arrival. Paris has changed in the years since you arrived with borrowed gloves and a name stitched together from silk and imagination. Or perhaps it's you who has changed, and the city is exactly the same. The bakeries still open before dawn. The newspapers still rustle on corner stands, soaked in scandal and rain. The boulevard cafes still fill with young women who laugh too loudly and hope too hard. You pass them quietly, a soft figure in a dark coat, no longer the flame, but the shadow it once cast. The boots you wear are sturdy, though no less polished than before. Your gloves are warm but unadorned, and the hat that sits low over your brow isn't meant to provoke attention, but to avoid it. Still, heads turn now and then. You see it in the flick of a stranger's eye, the slow double take from a vendor who recognizes a story he once read. They don't speak, and neither do you. You've become a figure of memory, not myth. A woman who was once someone everyone wanted to see, and now simply moves past them on the street, steady as a clock that no longer chimes. There is relief in this anonymity, though it is tinged with the faintest sorrow. You no longer worry about being the best dressed, the first to speak, the last to leave. You walk at your own pace, through neighborhoods that never welcomed you before. Once, such places would have whispered, questioned, closed their doors when they saw you coming. Now, they merely nod. The scandal has faded into nostalgia. You are no longer dangerous, just remembered. You stop often, at windows, at fountains, in front of cafes you never noticed when you were busy being noticed yourself. The men sipping wine at midday no longer rise when you pass. The women no longer lower their voices. You are just another figure in the crowd, wrapped against the cold, walking toward nothing in particular. It's a strange kind of peace, earned perhaps, or simply inherited from time. Once, while browsing a stall along the Seine, you overhear a pair of students discussing a woman who once bathed in champagne. One insists she was a dancer. The other says she married into royalty. They laugh, inventing details with the careless joy of people who don't know the cost of invention. You don't correct them. You buy a book of poetry instead, your fingers pausing on the cover just long enough for the vendor to offer a respectful glance. "Madame," he says, as he wraps it in brown paper. No recognition, just courtesy. You thank him and walk away, your shoulders a little lighter than they were that morning. You pass salons where you were once the center of gravity. Chandeliers glitter behind windows you used to step through with a deliberate tilt of the chin. Now you see the newest faces, girls with sharp smiles and diamonds that haven't yet known the weight of debt. You feel no envy, only a strange detachment. You were once that smile, that tilt, that illusion of permanence. You know what it costs. You know what remains after the music stops. In quieter moments, you wonder what they say about you now, if they say anything at all. Perhaps you're a footnote in the stories of the young women who followed you. A name they drop when describing the power of allure, the art of control. Perhaps you're an example of what happens when too much light is gathered into one fragile form. Or perhaps you are none of that. Just another woman who once wore pearls and now walks home through a fading afternoon. Your rooms are smaller now, but full of things you've chosen for yourself. A worn chaise by the window. A small writing desk that always smells faintly of violets. A bookshelf lined with novels and plays, most of them read twice. You do not host. You do not perform. But sometimes at night, you hum music from a time when you did, and it drifts softly through the open window, like a secret too quiet to carry far. You still write letters, though fewer arrive in return. One day, a parcel appears with no note, just a brooch you once sold at auction, returned without explanation. You turn it over in your hand, trace the tiny missing stone at the corner, and place it back in the drawer with the others. It doesn't matter. The stories attached to such objects have long since concluded. What matters is the present, The slippered steps on cold floors, the scent of rose soap in your bath, the sound of a city living just beyond your walls. And when you walk now among strangers, you do so not to be seen, but to remember. You remember the girl you were, the woman you became, the myth that formed in the space between them. You do not regret any of it, not the heights, not the falls, not even the whispers that once threatened to unravel you. They were threads in the same tapestry, and you wore it with defiance, and sometimes with joy. The city no longer speaks your name aloud, but it carries you still, in corners, in echoes, in silhouettes glimpsed in passing. And when you return to your flat at dusk, coat folded over one arm, book in hand, you do not close the curtains. You sit by the window and watch the lamps flicker on one by one across the rooftops, their soft glow reminding you that shadows are not absence. They are presence shaped by light. Paris turns its gaze elsewhere now, but beneath its streets, behind its walls, and under the stone arches where its secrets hum, there are still stories that belong to you. Hidden rooms, velvet stairs, doors that opened only for those who knew where to knock. And perhaps, if we follow those passages long enough, if we peer behind the folds of gaslight and dust, we'll find them again. Let's step underground. You descend through a narrow doorway, nestled between a bakery and a hat shop. A door no one notices unless they've been told where to look. The street above is gray, with coal smoke and foot traffic, but down here the world shifts. The first stair is stone, worn soft in the center by decades of cautious shoes. The second is darker. By the fourth step, the light from above has vanished behind the curve of the entryway, and all that remains is the flicker of your oil lamp and the quiet echo of your own breath. There is no signage, no greeting, no invitation, only descent. The air grows colder with each step, the temperature sinking not with the season, but with the weight of centuries. Paris above is chatter and rhythm, light and movement. Paris below is silence, stillness, secrets layered in mortar and dust. You've heard about these places before, rooms carved beneath brothels, tunnels that once ferried messages, goods, and, when necessary, bodies. No one speaks of them openly. But in the world you once moved through, whispered knowledge was its own kind of currency. And now you follow that knowledge into the earth. Your lamp casts long shadows along the walls. You pass brick and limestone, iron grates rusted shut, wooden beams bowed under weight they were never meant to carry. This passage leads not to catacombs, that's farther still, but to something stranger. A network of private rooms, some large enough to host gatherings, others no bigger than confessionals. This is not a place for the dead. It's a place for the living who needed to exist beyond the reach of daylight. You reach a landing, the floor damp and uneven, and push open a thick wooden door. It groans on its hinges and opens into a chamber lined with faded wallpaper, its floral pattern barely visible through the grime. A chandelier hangs above, dusty but intact, each crystal dangling like a breath caught in place. The room smells of oil, candle wax, and the faintest hint of perfume, old and sweet, the kind used to mask something less pleasant. On one wall, a set of shelves holds wine bottles long since emptied. A sofa sits in the corner, sagging in the middle, draped in what might once have been velvet. Someone has left a pair of gloves on the windowsill, though the only window here is painted onto the wall in fading blue. This was once a parlor, a hidden one, a place where deals were made and names were never spoken. You imagine the rustle of skirts, the clink of glass, the way voices would drop as new guests entered. A woman like you might have been here once, not to entertain, but to listen, to gather, to escape. These rooms were for women who could not afford to be seen, but could not afford to disappear either. You move on, down a hall with walls close enough to touch with both hands. Another chamber reveals a long table, scarred by years of use. At its center sits a candlestick, still upright, its wax drippings frozen like tears. There are chairs of different sizes, none matching, all facing inward. This was a place for strategy, for meetings behind the backs of husbands and policemen and creditors. You picture the faces around the table, nervous, sharp-eyed, powdered, and deliberate. Perhaps one of them wore your old scent. Perhaps one of them left behind the faint lipstick stain, still visible on the rim of a chipped glass. There's something sacred about these rooms. Not because they were pure, but because they were private. In a city where spectacle ruled, these underground chambers were for the moments when no one could perform. You wonder what was confessed here, what was planned, what was buried beneath laughter and brandy and lace. The walls don't answer, but they remember. You feel it in the quiet, thick, watchful, heavy with unspoken things. You find a corridor blocked with collapsed stone, and beside it, a narrow stair that wends deeper. It leads to a vault smaller than the others. This one is candlelit, just barely, the wax fresh, the air warmer. Someone has been here recently. You step in and find it empty save for a bench and a single ledger open on a stand. Its pages are filled with elegant script, names, dates, symbols you can't decipher. You run your hand gently across the surface. Some of the names are underlined, some are crossed out. None are familiar, and yet the ritual of it, the intention, feels close. As if you too were once listed in a book like this. As if somewhere, someone recorded your presence in ink, meant to last beyond fashion and scandal. You leave the book untouched and move back toward the main hallway. The path loops around itself, circling slowly like a serpent coiled under the city. You find another room, this one filled with mirrors. Each cracked or fogged, none hung straight. They lean against the walls, lie face up on tables, rest half buried under fabric and dust. You step into the center and see your reflection multiply. Dozens of you, flickering in and out of the dim light, some broken, some whole. You stare for a long time, not at any one version, but at the collective, your face rendered as memory, as warning, as artifact. You remove your gloves, not out of carelessness, but reverence. Your fingers brush one of the mirrors, tracing a line through the dust. In your reflection, your eyes meet your own, not with surprise, but with something closer to resignation. The woman who once moved through salons and opera boxes now moves through echoes and stone, and yet you are not diminished, not erased. You are part of this place now, not its queen, its witness. The way back is colder. The air shifts as you ascend, the sounds of the city slowly filtering in from above. Muffled wheels, laughter, a street musician practicing the same tune he's been playing since spring. When you emerge into the light, blinking against the gray sky, the street looks unchanged. But you have carried something up with you, something soft and weighty that settles in your chest like a name you haven't spoken in years. You walk away without looking back, but the memory of stone and silence trails behind you like a hem. The city continues unaware, but beneath its elegance, beneath its polished doors and scented halls, the underground still waits, rooms filled with secrets and shadows, and the soft footprints of women like you who passed through and never quite left. And now, with dusk rolling in above ground, let's step deeper into the dark and see what those underground parlors truly held behind closed doors. The second time you descend into the underground, you don't hesitate at the door. You know how the steps feel beneath your boots now. The slickness of the stone, the quiet bend of the stairs, the way the air holds its breath halfway down. This time, you bring no lamp. Instead, you carry a small candle and flint, the kind a girl might carry in her coat pocket while running between shadows. You light it at the bottom of the stairs, the flame trembling like a heartbeat in the cavernous dark. The flickering glow dances along the wall, illuminating a narrow corridor that winds left, then left again, until you reach the room they once called the parlor. But this is no parlor you'd recognize from the world above. There are no mirrors here, no soft upholstery or velvet curtains. There is a low ceiling, heavy with soot and old breath, and a wide table set with goblets made of pewter and glass, no two alike. The benches are worn smooth from years of shifting weight, and the stone floor is cold even through your boots. The walls seem to absorb sound, not just muffle it, but drink it, as though every whisper ever uttered here still lingers in the limestone. This is where business was conducted, in its quietest, most deliberate form. Not the noisy bargains of street corners, or the glittering wagers of salons, but the negotiations behind the mask, the ones made with a nod, a glance, a veiled phrase. You step inside, the flame casting long shadows as you move toward the bench nearest the far wall. There are initials carved into the surface, some deep and deliberate, others shallow and rushed. Names not spoken aloud, codes, perhaps warnings. You brush your hand over them gently, as if they might speak to you. The whispering parlors were never meant for celebration. They were places of trade, strategy, and survival. This one still carries the scent of perfume long since spilled and candle smoke that never fully dispersed. Women sat here, shoulder to shoulder, corsets creaking, fingers laced tightly in their laps, listening. Not to music, not to flirtation, but to instructions, to warnings, to the quiet counsel of women who'd learned how to move unseen and unheard through a city that watched them too closely. You picture a gathering, 4 or 5 women seated in the half-light, the kind of half-light that forgives mistakes and masks bruises. One speaks softly, her voice steady, explaining which client has turned sour, which man has grown dangerous, which inspector is no longer satisfied with coin alone. Another passes a vial. Of perfume? Of laudanum? No one asks. In this room, knowledge is offered like a shared coat in the rain, accepted quickly, without question, without thanks. The women who passed through these rooms were not victims, though many were hunted. They were not saints, though some held mercy in their hands when it was not deserved. They were not queens, though they ruled more carefully than any monarch above. They were something else entirely, intermediaries between light and shadow, trained to read a room by the scent in the air and the way a man crossed his legs. They learned each other's silences like poetry, knowing when a pause meant danger and when it meant escape. You find a stool near the far corner and sit, your candle trembling on the table beside you. The flame reflects in a half-shattered goblet, casting strange patterns on the ceiling above. You wonder who last sat in this very spot. Did she rest her hands here, as you do now? Did she leave this room with more knowledge than she arrived with, or less hope? There's no ledger here, no record of meetings or names. That was the point. These walls were trusted. These walls held the weight of truths no one dared speak aloud. In the hush, you can almost hear them. Not voices, but breath. The trace of conversation long buried in stone. A warning passed from one woman to another. A plan to leave town before someone grew too possessive. A list of aliases. A lock of hair kept in a locket for a reason no one dared ask. The parlors were not just sanctuaries. They were fortresses. Not built with walls and doors, but with rules, with memory, with loyalty, boldest currency, shared risk. On the wall behind you, you notice a seam, faint, nearly hidden beneath the soot and grime. You press gently, and a panel shifts open just enough to reveal a small alcove, a cupboard, or perhaps a shrine. Inside is a bottle sealed with wax, half full, the label long gone. Beside it sits a folded scrap of silk, discolored at the edges, and a child's glove no larger than your palm. These things do not speak, but they carry stories. A memory left behind in case the woman never returned. A promise made in fabric and glass. You close the panel and let it vanish back into the wall. There are no clocks down here, but time still moves. You feel it in the settling dust, the chill that creeps up from the floorboards. These rooms were never meant to be permanent. They were temporary shelters for women who knew too well the cost of staying too long anywhere. And yet, the parlors remain, forgotten by the city above, but preserved by the stubborn memory of stone. You rise slowly and walk back toward the passage, your candle nearly burned down. Behind you, the whispering parlor fades into dark, but its weight follows you, resting across your shoulders like a shawl. These rooms are empty now, but they are not abandoned. They wait, they listen, and maybe, on nights like this, they remember you too, not by name, but by the silence you carried with you, the footsteps you left behind, the breath you exhaled when you realized no one would follow. Back at the stair, you pause and listen. The city above is alive, horns, voices, wheels, shoes against the pavement. The world continues as if none of this ever existed. But you know better. You've seen where the performances ended, where truth took off its gloves, where power whispered through the walls in the voices of women no one dared record. You climb the steps again, and behind you, the parlors return to silence. But the next chamber waits. The next chamber you enter feels like a lie. It's too soft, too ornate, too deliberately decorated to be underground. You pause at the threshold, unsure whether you've stumbled into someone's memory or someone's illusion. The walls are covered in crushed red velvet, aged and peeling in places, but still plush where the light catches. Gas sconces line the room in symmetrical pairs, and though their flames are long extinguished, the soot stains beneath them suggest they burned often and late into the night. The floor is carpeted in thick woven rugs, layered on top of each other, their patterns just visible through dust and dimness. Every surface glows with the memory of indulgence. You take a slow step forward, and the boards beneath the rug creak, not in warning, but in welcome. This place is not for secrets whispered in fear. This place is for secrets whispered in pleasure and in power. There's a faint perfume in the air, not from a fresh application, but something sunk into the fabric itself. Rose and tobacco, sandalwood and powdered skin. The scent of courtesans, kept women, and actresses who never quite made it to the stage. It's intimate, but not inviting, as though the room itself is watching you, remembering what it used to be. A long couch sits against the far wall, its cushions sagging but intact. Above it hangs a portrait, not quite ruined, but far from clear. The paint has cracked and curled, the face half obscured. It may have once been a woman reclining in silks, her gaze turned just away from the viewer. Now she's a ghost in oils and dust, impossible to name, impossible to forget. This room, this performance of finery, isn't just decoration, it's theater. You can feel it in the bones of the space. This was a set, a backdrop, an illusion crafted with velvet and candlelight for men who wanted to believe they were in control, even when they were being played like violins. A woman would bring a client down here not to serve, but to perform a part he believed he'd written. The generous lover, the patient protector, the benevolent owner. In truth, it was always her stage. You trail your fingers along a nearby screen, a folding partition covered in painted scenes of frolicking cupids and fruit-laden gardens. Behind it, you find a chaise, its silk upholstery stained and torn. On the floor beneath it, a fan lies half open, its lace scorched at one edge. You bend to pick it up, brushing away dust. The ivory slats are engraved with initials and a tiny rose motif. Maybe it was dropped in haste. Maybe it was left as a symbol. Or maybe it simply broke, like everything else in this chamber eventually does. And then you hear it, a soft sound behind the wall. Not a shuffle, not an echo, but a draft. Air moving where it shouldn't be. You press your palm to the velvet and feel a difference in the texture, softer in one strip, warmer in another. With a gentle push, a section of wall gives way, swinging open on silent hinges to reveal a hollow passage. Narrow, shadowed, built for observation, not comfort. You step inside. The corridor behind the velvet is tight, barely wide enough for you to walk without brushing both shoulders against the plaster. It curves sharply and narrows further. You begin to see slits in the walls, thin vertical cuts spaced at intervals. Observation points, peepholes, places where someone could watch without being seen. These weren't built for safety. They were built for surveillance, for amusement, or for control. As you walk, glimpses of the velvet room reappear through the slits. From this angle, you can see it all, the faint outlines of where clients once sat, where performers leaned close, where transactions were sealed with a sigh instead of a signature. You imagine a girl behind these walls, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the scene before her, learning everything she needed to know without making a sound. Perhaps she was an apprentice, too young to work the room, but old enough to watch and remember. Or perhaps she wasn't meant to be there at all. Maybe she had escaped another room, another fate, and found a way to disappear in the walls. Hidden, but not helpless. You wonder how many women memorized men's habits through these slits. How many secrets were overheard here? How many blackmail notes drafted with the knowledge stolen from this corridor? There's a ladder at the end, metal rungs cold beneath your gloves. You climb without hesitation, knowing by now that every stair in this world leads somewhere someone once paid dearly to reach. At the top, another hidden door. You push it open and find yourself in a mirrored powder room, abandoned now, but still lined with gilded vanities and empty perfume bottles. Lipstick stains remain on handkerchiefs. A hairpin glints on the tiled floor. It's as if the women who used this space stepped out only moments ago. But you know they didn't. They vanished long ago, leaving behind only traces, reflections, ghosts in glass and gold. You rest your hand on one vanity and stare into the mirror. Your own face looks back, tired, curious, shadowed at the edges. But behind it, in the corner of the room, the mirror reflects something else. A door you didn't notice. A small one, set low into the wall. You turn and walk toward it, opening it with the tip of your boot. It leads back to the hollow walls. You've walked in circles now. Or perhaps not circles, spirals, deeper each time. The velvet, the vice, the secrets in the plaster. It's not just a structure. It's a system. A design built by women who knew how to make performance into power, who turned decoration into deception, who gave themselves names and then shed them just as easily. You leave the velvet chamber last, step by step, back into the cold corridors that connect everything. And as you walk, you imagine all the women who did the same before you, not as ghosts, but as architects. And still, there's more. The deepest chamber waits ahead, where all pretense is gone, and what remains are the bones of everything the city tried to forget. There's no lock on the final door, just a rusted ring handle that pulls outward with a soft groan. The passage beyond doesn't open into a chamber the way you expect. It slopes down slowly at first, then more steeply, until you're no longer walking level, but descending into something that feels less like a room, and more like a memory the city tried to bury. The walls here are no longer dressed in velvet or painted plaster. They're raw brick, uneven and old, laid without polish or pattern. The air is colder now, thick with moisture that beads on the ceiling and drips into the cracks at your feet. It's quiet in a new way. Not the hush of secrecy, but the hush of abandonment. Like the world above stopped caring what happened here long ago. At the base of the slope, the path opens wide. You step into a long gallery lit faintly by your candle's orange glow. Here, there is no furniture, no curtains, no stage. Just rows of benches, stone, low to the ground, lined up along the walls as if waiting for an audience that never arrived or never left. It's here the illusion crumbles. No velvet, no laughter, no perfume to soften the edges. Just the structure beneath it all. The part no one was meant to see. This was where the women came when they weren't playing a part. When the doors closed upstairs and the coin was counted, the gowns were hung, the bruises cooled, and the laughter died in their throats. Not because they couldn't laugh, but because no one was watching anymore. This is the reality of the job without the theater. The aching feet, the hoarse voices, the endless hours waiting between patrons, the loneliness that fills the gaps between shows, the pressure to always be more beautiful, more clever, more willing, because there's always someone younger upstairs, learning your lines. You sit on one of the benches, and the cold moves through your skirts like water. You imagine the sound of a woman's breath in this space, a sigh between duties, a prayer to no one in particular, a song hung to herself just to keep the silence from swallowing her, the kind of moment that no client ever sees. Because the work didn't stop when the gas lights dimmed, it only changed shape. Some worked shifts down here for the other kind of clients, the ones who didn't want the performance, who didn't want velvet or mirrors or names. They came for something else entirely. And the women who took those appointments didn't get gowns. They didn't get songs. They got paid, yes, but not in coin alone. Sometimes in protection, sometimes in silence, sometimes in nothing, but the promise that someone else might have it worse. There's chalk on the wall. You lean in to see the marks, numbers, names, tallies, a calendar scratched in haste, or just something to prove someone was here, that they counted the days, the hours, the men. You run your fingers across them and feel how deeply they were etched. They weren't drawn. They were carved. Slowly, desperately, with intention. One reads simply, Thursday, rain again. Another, he cried. And then, this one, near the baseboard, nearly lost in grime. Still me. It's almost too much. Because you understand, suddenly, that for all the layers of silk and flirtation above, this was where the women came to be themselves. Not performers, not illusions, just tired, breathing, flesh and blood people. This is where they sat barefoot, faces bare of powder, and spoke aloud the things they weren't allowed to say, about who scared them, about who surprised them, about who made them feel, even for a moment, like they were more than a transaction. But even here, even in this forgotten room, the work didn't end. They mended stockings here, cleaned the blood from sleeves, shared stolen candles, shared food, laughed even. Because you can't keep working without a little laughter. One woman had drawn a face in the soot on the back wall, cartoonish, crooked, with long lashes and a ridiculous grin. A joke for no one. Or maybe for everyone who sat here in the quiet, just trying to keep the cold off their skin. You hear it, faint and imaginary. A clatter of boots overhead. A bell. A knock on a pipe that signals someone's been chosen, that it's time to return to the stage. Someone stands, adjusts her bodice, and climbs the steps with a sigh that isn't quite defeat. Because this was never a job you could leave at the door. The music upstairs might stop, but the rhythm of labor beneath it kept going. Unseen, uncelebrated. That's the trick, isn't it? The performance was never really for the men. It was for survival, for dignity, for the illusion of control in a world that rarely offered any. You don't stop being that person when the curtain falls. You just become a version that doesn't need the applause. You rise and move toward the far end of the room, where a small passage branches off. It's darker here, and the air is heavier, but something draws you forward. A final hallway, this one narrower than the rest. The walls bear handprints, actual handprints, smeared in soot and candle wax, overlapping and fading. Like 100 women once touched these stones on their way through, leaving pieces of themselves behind. At the end is a door, heavier than the others. Closed, but not locked. You rest your palm against it and pause, listening. There's no sound, just the weight of everything that came before it. Everything held in the space between labor and survival, between velvet and stone, between the stage and the silence after. You press forward into the last hidden room, the one no one speaks of, but everyone knew existed, because even in the deepest part of the city, the work never stopped. It only changed what it asked of you. The door opens with the kind of resistance that doesn't just suggest age, it implies warning. Not from anything alive, but from the space itself. As if time has swelled the frame on purpose, trying to keep this room tucked away a little longer. But the wood yields, eventually, with a reluctant exhale of dust and a puff of stale air that brushes your face like a breath held too long. You step through, and immediately your skin prickles. This room isn't like the others. You've passed velvet lounges and whispered passageways. You've crossed stages hidden behind mirrors and sat in chambers where secrets were currency. But this feels different. Lower, thicker. The moment you enter, the air changes its character. It no longer moves around you. It presses against you, clinging faintly to your throat and sinking into the folds of your clothing. Your candle flame doesn't flicker. It shrinks, like even the light hesitates to spread too far here. And then there's the smoke. It's not billowing, not dramatic. It doesn't swirl or sting. It simply exists, lying close to the ceiling like a memory draped across the rafters. You wouldn't even notice it if the room weren't so still. It drifts above you like a ghost that forgot to leave, pale gray and oddly motionless, without a source you can see. It seems older than the candle in your hand, older than the air itself. Not the kind of smoke from a fresh fire, but the kind that has seeped into everything over decades, into brick, into cloth, into silence. The room is long and narrow, like a hallway pretending to be a chamber. To your right, the wall curves slightly inward, where old pipes trace lines in the soot, like veins beneath thinning skin. To your left are the remains of wooden shelves, bowed from years of weight long removed. Rusted hinges still cling to the frames, hinting at doors that once protected something worth hiding. But the shelves are empty now, except for one where a single melted candle stump still sits, hardened wax, puddled like frozen cream. At the far end of the room stands a furnace, or what's left of one. An iron box, squat and wide, with its mouth gaping open like a giant yawn. The grate lies sideways on the floor beside it, as if someone once ripped it loose in haste. You kneel carefully in front of it, mindful of the grime that cakes the floor here. Black soot coats the inside, but deeper in the belly of the furnace, you see the brittle corners of paper, pages that never fully burned. You don't reach in, not yet. Just the sight of it is enough to chill you, more than the cold stone beneath your knees. People didn't come here for warmth. This room was made for disposal, not just of paper or refuse, but of truths too heavy to survive the surface. Letters, ledgers, notes scrawled in anger or affection, perhaps even photographs, rare as they were. You can imagine the haste with which someone might have come down here, with trembling hands, stuffing pages into the furnace's throat, striking a match, hoping the smoke would erase something dangerous, or shameful, or just too personal. But then there's the other smell. Beneath the ash and soot, there's something faintly bitter. Not decay, but something chemical, cloying. You follow it to a corner where a few bottles still remain. Glass, thick and green-tinted, sealed with corks that have dried and cracked with time. The labels are faded. Some are unreadable. But one still bears part of a name. Chloro something. You don't need to see the rest. This wasn't just a furnace room. It was a place of endings. Not murders, necessarily. That would be too neat, too dramatic. What happened here was quieter, more desperate. The kind of endings that come from silence, from exhaustion, from rooms with no windows, and people with no choices. women who didn't wake, men who paid too much and demanded more than the body could give, mistakes no one could afford to report. And so they were handled here, carefully, privately, burned away, and the smoke carried them upward into the rooms where music played and wine poured, and no one asked too many questions. You stand slowly, brushing your skirts off, and move toward the shelves again. Tucked behind one rotting plank, you find something soft. Fabric. You pull gently, and a glove slides free. Lavender, delicate, trimmed with a single mother-of-pearl button at the wrist. A lady's glove, monogrammed with a small gold V. You wonder what she left behind besides this. Was she a client? A worker? A spy? Did she come down here willingly? Or was she led? You imagine her pressing her hand to the warm stone walls, watching her name vanish in flame. The smoke above stirs slightly. Only slightly, but enough to make you pause. There's a grate in the ceiling. You hadn't noticed it before. Small, square, covered with a mesh so fine it looks like lace in the candlelight. Through it, you see movement, soft shadows, and the faint shimmer of something gold. Another room above. Another life continuing. The smoke passed through here once, climbed through the grate, and kissed the feet of men who thought the fire was only for their comfort. But the fire was busy down here too. It wasn't heat, it was forgetting. Burning names, stories, evidence, maybe even regret. You turn back toward the furnace and see something scratched into the iron near the base. A name? A phrase? You kneel to read it, brushing away soot. I was here, but not alone. It's not signed. You sit for a moment, candle dimming beside you, listening to the faint drip of condensation somewhere behind the wall. This is the part no one saw, the part no one wanted to see. The smoke was not just a product. It was a tool. It carried guilt and grief upward, tucked it beneath perfume and laughter, and let everyone pretend that nothing ever happened down here. But it did. You stand and move back toward the doorway, suddenly aware of how much of the smoke clings to you. Not in scent, but in sensation. You carry it now, in your breath, in the silence behind your thoughts. You'll never quite forget this room, even if you never speak of it. You pause at the threshold, looking back once. There's no music here, no mirrors, no rouge, just soot and silence, and the slow drift of history's breath. And the smoke, still creeping, still watching. The air outside doesn't greet you so much as it accepts your return. You've slipped through the hidden exit, the one not meant for clients or carriages, and your feet touch the alley with the careful hush of someone who's done as many times before. A faint gust curls around your ankles, damp and cold, carrying with it the sense of old brick, extinguished lamps, and the slow exhale of a city not quite ready to wake. You pull your shawl closer without thinking, the fabric scratchy but familiar, and for a moment, you simply stand there, half-shadowed beneath a broken awning, eyes adjusting to the nothingness ahead. This hour is strange, neither night nor morning. London holds its breath, suspended between gaslight and sun, and the cobbled lane before you is all mist and memory. It isn't quiet. London is never truly quiet, but the usual clatter is muffled, like someone turned down the volume of the world. Somewhere to the north, a milkman's cart rattles and fits and starts, and far to the west, the early hum of industry begins to grumble. But here, in this back passage behind a brothel no respectable gentleman ever admits to visiting, all you hear are your own footsteps as you begin the walk home. Your boots are tired. You don't need to look to know the soles are wearing thin. You felt the cobbles pushing up through them since the second hour of your shift. Still, they carry you forward. Past shuttered shops and windows closed tight against fog. Past alleys that reek of fish water and the sharp tongue of coal ash. You know which stones are loose. You know which doorways harbor rats. You know exactly how long you can make eye contact with a man walking past without inviting trouble. No one speaks to you, and no one will. That's part of the unwritten agreement in this part of London. Women who leave before dawn don't get questions. You are not a thief, not a mother, not a lover. You are something else entirely. Someone who has seen too much to look surprised, and too tired to pretend otherwise. You pass another girl, heading in the opposite direction, eyes hollow, jaw clenched tight beneath her bonnet. You both nod, barely. There's a language in that, recognition without intrusion. The kind of understanding that lives in silence. As the fog thickens, the lamplight blurs to gold halos above your head. You pause beneath one, tilting your face upward to catch the faint warmth. It doesn't do much. The gaslight flickers, thin and nervous, painting shadows that jitter when you move. Still, for a moment, you pretend it's the sun. You imagine standing in a place where the streets are dry and the air doesn't smell like coal and wet cloth. You picture grass, green and soft beneath bare feet. But the moment passes quickly. London doesn't let you dream long, not without charging interest. Your stomach growls, soft but insistent. You can't remember the last thing you ate. There was tea, hours ago, poured weak and shared with the girl who cried in the stairwell. You gave her your biscuit without thinking. Now, hunger hums in your limbs, not sharp, just present. The kind of hunger that sits quietly and waits its turn. Maybe there's a crust of bread left at your room. Maybe the corner bakery will open early, and the boy there will give you something warm in exchange for a wink and a whispered joke. You pass a constable standing near the corner, his coat buttoned high, his eyes unfocused. He sees you, but he doesn't see you. That's part of the game. As long as you don't bleed in the street or scream too loud, you're not real to him. His presence is not protection. It's a boundary, one you've learned not to cross. Your route home is familiar now. Past the butcher's that smells like salt and sawdust, even when shuttered. Past the church with its crumbling facade and crooked bell. The street narrows, squeezing between buildings that lean like old drunks. And here you feel the walls pull closer. Your fingers brush against cool brick as you walk, grounding you. 1 block from your room, you pass a line of laundry strung too low, forgotten overnight. A chemise hangs limp beside a man's sock. You wonder about the woman who washed it. You wonder if she's warm right now, wrapped in the same garment, dreaming of something better. At your door, you pause. The street is empty. Just you, the fog, and the faint impression that something unseen watches from the upper windows. You pull your key from its hiding spot behind the brick, third one down, chipped at the edge, just wide enough to shelter metal. The key sticks as always. You twist harder, shoulder against wood, and the door creaks open with a reluctant groan. Inside, your room is quiet, small, familiar. The floorboards whimper under your weight. There's a candle stub on the table, already leaning from the last burn, and a single blanket folded neatly on your cot. You don't light the candle. The gray light leaking through the window is enough. You lower yourself onto the mattress and unlace your boots with stiff fingers. Your toes throb. You press them flat against the floor, grounding yourself. Then you let go of your shawl, the air biting the skin beneath your collar as it slides off your shoulders. For a moment, you just breathe. The smell of the underground clings to you. Smoke, rouge, the sweetness of stale perfume, and something else, something sadder. You'll bathe later, maybe, if the kettle heats fast enough, if your bones stop aching, but not now. Now, you let your body fold into the quiet. You lay back with your hands crossed gently on your stomach, eyes half-lidded as the city's muffled chorus stirs again beyond the walls. You can't hear the brothel from here. You can't hear the women, or the velvet stairs, or the creak of the viewing room floor. But they're still there, working, waiting, surviving. And as your eyes close, you think of someone else. She doesn't walk these streets. She doesn't slip out back doors before dawn or lace her own corset. She wakes when she pleases, in sheets soft as cream, beside a man who doesn't ask questions. Her name isn't whispered behind fans. It's spoken in private salons and recorded in journals of the elite. She has everything you don't. And yet, she is still a woman in London. And that comes with its own price. Let's visit her now. Let's see how the other half of this city rises with the sun. You wake not to a knock, nor to a shouted name from the stairs below, but to the way morning light curls around velvet drapes and slips past the corners of your eyes. It glows soft and filtered through the gauze of lace-lined windows, touching the ceiling above your bed as if painting it into existence. The light isn't rushed. It waits, polite but certain, until you shift against the pillows and open your eyes. Eyes that do not blink into darkness, but into soft colors and polished wood, and the faint scent of lavender oil still clinging to last night's linens. You are not startled by the quiet. It belongs to you. This is a silence earned through arrangement, an agreement signed not with pen and paper, but with glances, invitations, and promises, whispered behind velvet curtains. You do not work the night shift. You are not summoned by bell or need. You wake when you choose to wake. And today, you choose to stay beneath the covers just a little longer. The warmth pooled around your legs and the silk sheet cool against your collarbone. Your room, if it can be called that, is not really a room at all. It's a performance, an extension of you. Every detail has been curated. The marble fireplace that burns more for atmosphere than for heat. A faint blue wallpaper with its French stenciling. A collection of small paintings that hang crooked, but expensively so. You stretch beneath the feathered quilt, toes sliding against linen, and glance toward the dressing table. Already, you can see the faint shimmer of your favorite perfume, catching the sunlight beside a porcelain dish of sugared violets. Somewhere beyond the door, someone is preparing your breakfast. You hear the faint clink of silver against porcelain, the steady murmur of a girl's voice, speaking to someone just out of range. The sounds don't rush you. They serve as a soft reminder. You are expected, but not demanded. You have time. Eventually, you rise. The silk dressing gown is waiting where it always is, folded across the velvet bench at the foot of your bed. You slip into it slowly, savoring the sensation of fabric against skin, the faint whisper it makes as it brushes your calves. There is no corset yet, no public version of yourself, just the quiet, indulgent figure of a woman who has become her own myth. The maid appears shortly after, eyes lowered, hands full of ribbons and linen. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. This morning, she draws your bath with precision, the water laced with rose oil and just a touch of milk to soften the skin. You step into it with practiced ease, the heat wrapping around your legs like a second robe, steam rising to kiss your jaw. You sit there for a long while, the only sound the slow drip of water from the tap and the gentle flutter of wings in the birdcage by the window. A white finch hops along its perch, chirping once, then settling back into sleep. You wash slowly, methodically, fingertips gliding across collarbones, wrists, behind the ears. You do not scrub, you cleanse. You do not prepare for labor. You prepare for observation. Once dried, you sit before the vanity, your reflection soft in the morning haze. The maid brushes your hair, counting strokes under her breath. It's not vanity, it's ritual. The woman in the mirror isn't merely you. She's a version of you carefully arranged for the world to admire. You select earrings with pearls, the size of teardrops, and slide them into place without fanfare. A pale lilac dress is chosen, high-necked but sheer at the sleeves, cinched with a cream sash tied in an artful knot. You are not dressing for the weather, or for comfort, or for practicality. You are dressing to remind anyone who sees you that you are someone else's treasure. Breakfast is laid out in the sunroom, a bright extension of the townhouse with ivy crawling along the outer walls and white tiles cool beneath bare feet. You eat alone, which suits you. One boiled egg, half a grapefruit, toast with quince preserve, tea, steeped dark and strong. And beside the plate, folded neatly, the note, your schedule. Not from him, he rarely writes, but from his valet, detailing the plans. A carriage will arrive at noon. A luncheon with a viscount's cousin. A box seat for the matinee, should you wish it. The dress code is implied. Gloves, of course. You do not sigh. You finish your tea. By noon, the carriage is waiting outside, modest by aristocratic standards, but gleaming black with polished brass fixtures. The driver tips his hat. You nod once. Inside, the seat cushions are worn in a familiar way. You sit with your back straight, fingers curled lightly around the edge of your reticule. Through the window, London passes in slices. Shopgirls rushing across the street, florists arranging early bouquets, the clatter of hooves on stone. You watch without seeing, your thoughts drifting. You wonder if the flower girl you saw last week is out today, or if the piano tuner on Chandos Street still hums as he works. The luncheon is uneventful, but not unpleasant. You smile when required. You sip champagne when offered. You listen to ladies gossip about each other, as if they are reading from the society pages in real time. You are spoken about as though you are not in the room, and then spoken to as though you are the room's secret. When one woman whispers that her brother finds you absolutely entrancing, you smile demurely and ask after the brother's wife. Later, at the matinee, you sit in the second row of the box, never the first. You do not wish to appear eager. A comedy unfolds on stage, full of sighing maidens and hapless suitors, and you laugh exactly when the others do, not a second before or after. Your presence here is not for entertainment. It is part of the arrangement. Visibility matters. If his friends see you, they know he still keeps you. And that is what counts. By the time the sun begins its descent, your carriage is winding back through Kensington. The house welcomes you with warmth, the kind that comes not from hearths, but from consistency. You are not home, but you are somewhere you can exhale. You retreat to your chambers, remove your gloves, loosen your stays. The weight of the day slips from your shoulders like a silk scarf. You dine lightly in the drawing room, alone again. A maid clears your plate while you sip a cordial and watch the fire flicker. You do not need to speak. The silence understands you. There is no shouting in these walls, no banging doors, no footsteps overhead, just the quiet rhythm of being seen and forgotten in equal measure. When you finally undress, the air is cool against your back. You run your fingers along the marks left by the corset, red ridges pressed into pale skin, then blow out the lamp with a practiced breath. You stand by the window for a long moment, robe loose at the shoulders, watching the gas lamps shimmer on the street below. Somewhere out there, a girl is still at work. Somewhere, a curtain is being pulled shut. Somewhere, a bell is ringing for a customer who won't remember her name. But up here, in this house, you walk in silk and silence. You are alone, but never quite lonely. And whether you are admired, envied, dismissed, or kept, one thing remains true. No one owns the quiet the way you do. The second knock of the morning always arrives precisely at 10. Not a moment earlier, not a breath too late. It is a short, efficient tap, not the clumsy knock of a visitor, nor the hesitant rap of a servant. It is the knock of someone paid to arrive, paid to wait, and paid to forget. A courier, likely no older than 16, stands on the front step in a plain coat too big for him, holding a parcel tied with satin ribbon and a note pressed into cream-colored paper. His boots are always clean. His eyes are always lowered. You don't open the door yourself, of course. The housemaid does, and she doesn't ask what it is. She brings the box upstairs, sets it on the edge of the settee, and glides out with the same stillness she arrived with. She knows not to linger. She also knows you'll ring the bell if the tea hasn't been warmed. You untie the ribbon slowly, your fingers practiced, savoring the sound of fabric parting from cardboard. The dress is inside, just as expected. A deep plum silk with delicate black lace at the collar and a pleated bustle shaped like a seashell. You draw it out by the shoulders and hold it against the light. It's perfect. Of course it is. Madame Fournier's work always is. You're not the only one she dresses. You're not even the most famous. But you are the one who always pays in cash and never asks for fittings. You've memorized your own measurements. The dressmaker never questions your requests. You don't ask for invoices. And so, a system develops. A quiet one with no ledger. You write your orders on thick paper and send them through the boy. He returns in 3 days with a dress and no opinion. It works for everyone. Still holding the plum silk, you wander to the mirror. The morning light has turned cool now, more silver than gold, and it casts a soft sheen on the fabric in your arms. You imagine how it will catch in the gaslight, how the collar will frame your throat, how the shadows will follow the pleats like petals folding in on themselves. You won't wear it today, but you'll wear it soon. There will be a night that calls for this kind of drama, and you intend to be ready. The courier also brings a letter today. It is not addressed in your lover's hand, but you recognize the seal, the mark of his solicitor. You do not open it right away. Instead, you tuck it beneath the velvet-covered writing blotter and pour yourself another cup of tea. The letter can wait. Most things do if you let them. Besides, you already know what it says. These letters always smell like negotiations, like polite warnings wrapped in wax. There is always something he is considering, and something you are meant to accept. But today, you will not be hurried. Instead, you place the dress gently back in its box and move to the tall wardrobe at the end of the room. Inside, there are gowns arranged not by color or season, but by function. The conversation pieces, lavender with pearl buttons, crimson with jet beading, hang at one end. The invisible dresses, useful for tea with wives or quiet strolls through galleries, rest at the other. In the center, the weapons, the dresses you wear when you need to win. You do not wear those often, but you never discard them. As you dress for the day, your choices are deliberate. Pale gray wool, high neckline, narrow sleeves. Modest enough to avoid commentary. Elegant enough to disarm suspicion. You know the layers required to live a double life. You know how much to show and when to hide. You know how to walk into a drawing room and appear as a distant cousin, a charming widow, or simply a friend from the country. You are, above all else, fluent in ambiguity. Later that afternoon, you visit Madame Fournier herself, not at her main shop, but at her private salon in Bloomsbury, where the more discreet clients are fitted by appointment only. She greets you with her usual soft smile and the faint scent of starch and lavender. She never asks how you are. She asks how the fabric sat on your shoulders, whether the sleeves chafed, whether the hem lifted too high when you climbed the stairs. She doesn't deal in feelings. She deals in silhouettes. While she adjusts the drape of a new bodice, you watch her hands work. Fingers stained faintly blue from thread dye, nails clipped close, a thimble worn smooth on her index finger. She pins without pricking, tugging the fabric this way and that, sculpting you like marble. You admire her, not just for her skill, but for the way she commands a room without raising her voice. She speaks 5 languages. She's dressed half the mistresses in London and 2 of the wives. She never confuses who's who. As you stand still on the pedestal, arms out to your sides, you wonder how many women have stood here before you, and how many will after. Has the dressmaker ever felt pity? Ever judged? Probably not. This isn't her game. She just makes the uniforms. After the fitting, You sip sherry in her parlor and listen to her mutter about the latest order from a woman who claimed to be French nobility and then fainted when asked to pay. You laugh lightly. You don't mention your own unpaid balance from 3 months ago, which you settled yesterday in a single envelope of crisp notes. Your finances remain arranged. For now, when you return home, the letter from the solicitor is still on the desk, unopened. You sit beside it, watching the dusk filter in through lace curtains. Outside, the sky begins to flush with soft lavender, the same hue as one of your earliest gowns. You remember that one, tight at the waist, too loose at the sleeves. You wore it to your first opera, seated beside a man who would later vanish with someone even younger. You remember the taste of the champagne. It was warm, but you drank it anyway. Eventually, you open the letter. It is brief. He will be traveling to Bath. His wife suspects something. Nothing specific, of course. Only moods and late returns. And for the sake of appearances, he will distance himself. For a few weeks, perhaps a month. He encloses a draft and his apologies. You fold the paper slowly, smoothing the creases, and place it back in the envelope. You do not sigh. You do not cry. You do not even frown. Instead, you open the dress box again. You remove the plum silk and lay it gently across the chaise. It will not be worn tonight, but perhaps tomorrow, or the next night. It will wait for its cue, just like you. Outside, the gas lamps flicker on. Across the street, a girl leans out a window to shake a rug. Below her, the shop boy locks up the greengrocer's stall. The city is preparing itself for dusk, cleansing the stage, resetting the props. And in your little upstairs room, where silence is a second skin, you prepare too. The courier will return tomorrow. The dressmaker will be ready. And you, always watching, always waiting, will keep the story going one quiet, stitched-together day at a time. You don't expect to be invited. Not really. It's more of a quiet assumption, the way fog settles over the city without asking first. The invitation is never written, never extended aloud, but it always finds you. A bouquet of yellow tea roses arrives at 11, with a card signed only with initials. The flowers are always fresh, never extravagant, never cheap. Enough to show thought, not enough to start rumors. By midday, you are seated in the second-best seat of the restaurant at Claridge's, not the one by the window, where wives like to see and be seen, and not too far back, where people are hidden on purpose. You are placed precisely where a woman like you should be. Noticeable, but never confirmed. You are elegance without explanation. A silk scarf tied just so. A smile that invites no questions. He arrives late, as always. A slight flush to the cheeks, the kind that suggests he's already had a morning drink. He apologizes with a kiss to your gloved hand and a well-rehearsed look of contrition. You forgive him before he asks. You always do. It's easier that way, for both of you. After all, you are not here to challenge him. You are here to be the part of his day that feels light. The waiter, young, attentive, too well trained to show recognition, greets you both by title and smiles only with his eyes. He places a bottle on the table without asking. Chablis, dry and cold. 2 glasses. You never finish yours, but you always let him order a second bottle. It makes things feel more generous. The conversation begins like it always does, with the weather, a passing mention of a mutual friend's marriage, something about horses. You nod in the right places, ask about his mother. She is not ill. She never has been. But it gives him something to talk about, something soft to rest his voice on. You don't interrupt. You don't redirect. You are the anchor to his self-importance. You are both aware of the rules. The conversation may circle your beauty, but it may not name it. It may flirt with scandal, but never touch it. It may hint at the closeness between you, but only in the rhythm of his spoon against his cup, or the way your hand brushes the hem of your skirt when you lean forward to listen. You have become fluent in invisible language. The restaurant is full, but the table is its own little world. You notice the way other men glance toward you, then quickly look away. You notice a woman across the room, narrowing her eyes ever so slightly, trying to place you. Are you someone's niece? A widow? A duchess with a mysterious past? The question will follow her all the way home. She mentioned you at dinner, but not by name. You know that silence is your best defense. You offer no stories. You smile when asked nothing. You let him talk. The meal arrives. Poached salmon, cucumber salad, delicate bread rolls wrapped in linen. He eats without pause. You eat slowly, small bites, careful posture. You have mastered the art of being present, but not memorable, lovely, but not loud. This lunch, like all your lunches, is not for indulgence. It is for positioning. He leans closer, says something clever. You laugh lightly, not because it's funny, but because the sound makes him smile. He enjoys feeling like he has delighted you. He enjoys the illusion that you are still new, still surprised. It is easier than reminding him how long this arrangement has been going on. A different waiter brings dessert, a plate of honeyed pears with cream. You notice the original waiter watching from a distance, making sure everything is perfect. He does not let the new boy bring the bill. It will be handled discreetly, through an account, through a signature no one will see. You never touch money in public. That, too, is part of the illusion. He mentions Paris again. Not a plan, not an offer, just the city. He's heard the spring shows will be extravagant this year. He says he might go. You nod. You do not ask if he means to take you. You will find out when the letter comes. Or doesn't. Either way, you will not press. Need is unseemly. After lunch, he suggests a walk. You agree. You always agree. He offers his arm, and you take it lightly, as if for balance. Outside, the air is crisp and bright, the kind of spring afternoon that London offers as an apology for its usual gloom. You walk slowly, heels clicking against stone, coat drawn just close enough to hide the line of your waist. You speak less now. The food and drink have softened his edges, made him quieter, more reflective. At the park, he pauses at the railing to watch the ducks. It's the same railing, the same pause, every time. He tells you something about his boyhood, how he used to feed swans here with his nursemaid. He doesn't remember her name. You nod. You wonder if he will remember yours in 20 years. He turns toward you, touches the side of your face. Not a caress, more like the way one checks for dust on porcelain. He says you're looking tired. You smile and say you've just not been sleeping well. He offers nothing in return, but he doesn't let go of your arm. You walk a little farther. Eventually, he glances at his watch and sighs as if it's a surprise. It isn't. He always leaves by 3. He says something about a meeting, about his brother, about something vague and male and far from here. You nod. He kisses your cheek, not too low, not too warm, and thanks you for your company. He says you're a comfort. You say nothing. He disappears into a carriage. You don't watch it drive away. Instead, you turn back toward the square, feet finding their own familiar rhythm, the silence wrapping around you like a shawl. You do not cry. You do not seethe. You do not think of him at all. Instead, you think of the smile you wore, the way it floated above the cut glass, above the sound of silver and soft cello music, above all the unspoken rules that kept you perfectly in place. You return home alone, as expected. You do not remember the waiter's name. He does not remember yours. And that, in this arrangement, is the closest thing to safety. The hours between 4 and dusk are the most precarious. Not because of what happens, but because of what doesn't. There's a particular kind of silence that lives in these hours, too late for luncheon, too early for evening gowns, too dull for scandal, and too bare for confession. It's when the house forgets its own sound. The ticking of the mantel clock grows louder than your thoughts. Even the birds outside seem uncertain if they should keep singing. You don't sit still during this time. You can't. If you stop, the silence wins, so you move. First through the wardrobe, checking the order of your gowns, your gloves, or fans. You smooth fabric that isn't wrinkled. You adjust hangers that weren't crooked. You move through your bedroom like a ghost, tidying the remnants of someone else's life. Your lady's maid, Ellen, comes and goes with soft, slippered steps. She brings fresh hot water, a selection of new corset laces, and a small envelope from a hat maker, who insists the feathers you requested were unavailable due to an incident at the docks. She does not look you in the eye. She never has. That's not how this arrangement works. You make a note to cancel the hat. By the time it arrives, the season will have turned, and with it, the fashion. If you wear it too late, they'll say you're trying too hard. If you wear it too early, they'll say you were shown a preview. And who was it who gave it to her? I wonder. You pace back toward the parlor, where the lace curtains glow faintly in the afternoon light. You hate the word parlor. It sounds like a waiting room in a boarding house, or a place for reading terrible poetry aloud. Still, it's where the piano lives, and sometimes you sit there, pressing keys softly until a tune half forms and slips away again. But not today. Today, the piano feels too formal, too bright. Instead, you settle on the chaise with a small silver brush and begin untangling your hair. The ritual is soothing, long strokes, always from root to end, always with the same steady pressure. You remember your mother doing this once, long before she knew what you would become. Back when she still believed your path would be quiet, domestic, defined by Sunday visits and strong suns. If she ever learns how you spend your days now, she'll either scream or deny it outright. Or both. You're not sure which would be worse. A soft knock at the back door interrupts the brush's rhythm. Ellen answers. It's not a visitor. It's the grocer's boy, bringing sugared almonds and 2 tins of tea from Fortin's. You didn't order them, which means he did. Or someone who wants you to think it was him. The box is unmarked, but you recognize the handwriting. Neat, masculine, intentionally unremarkable. You open the tin and find a note tucked inside the paper. Just 4 words. Thursday. Discretion. No lace. You fold the note without a sound, press it flat, and slip it behind the inkwell on your desk. You won't reply. He doesn't expect you to. That's not how this works. You are a kept secret, not a correspondent. The light outside has shifted again. The shadows on the carpet grow longer, blue-gray, and cool. Somewhere beyond the street, a carriage rattles past, and you imagine the woman inside, bonnet tied too tightly, gloves that pinch, a child pulling at her hem. She will arrive late. She always does. Her husband will frown and mention the soup. You close your eyes. For a moment you try to sleep. Not real sleep, just the soft kind, where your mind drifts along the edge of dreams, but never steps in. You imagine the sea or a forest, or anywhere that doesn't require you to watch yourself constantly. But your body doesn't loosen. It never does in the daylight. There's a part of you always alert, always slightly tensed. A part that listens for footsteps. That notes which hinge creaks and how long a silence lasts between knocks. A part that remembers the names of the wives and what color their hair is. By 5, you begin to prepare again. Not for anything specific, just in case. You press powder into your skin with the softest puff. You dab perfume on your wrists, jasmine, with a hint of bergamot, the kind that smells expensive, but not foreign. You adjust your hair, not to change it, but to remind yourself you are still composed. You change dresses. The gray wool goes back into the wardrobe. Out comes the dusky rose silk with embroidered sleeves. Elegant, but not demanding. The kind of gown you wear when you expect to be seen, but not remembered. This is the secret of the hours between. They are full of invisible performances, quiet rehearsals, silent monologues. You become the character again before anyone arrives. You remind yourself what your posture should be, what your laugh should sound like, what stories you've told, and to who. Because sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, someone will knock before dinner. A friend of a friend, a man who happened to be in the area, a visitor who won't stay long. And in those moments, you must be ready. Not for the conversation, but for the act. You must remember if you're supposed to be from Devon, or Cornwall, or Bath, whether your husband was lost at sea, or died of something romantic, whether your name today is Evelyn or Clara, or Miss Harrow. You can't afford to hesitate, so you dress. You prepare. You sit again by the lace-curtained window with a book you're not reading, waiting for footsteps that may never come. These hours are quiet, but not restful. They are the exhale before a gasp. They are the moment a coin spins in the air, not yet landed. And you, suspended between one persona and the next, remain perfectly still until the first bell rings again. And then the game begins. It begins differently than most interruptions in your life, with no warning, no letter sent ahead, no whispered hints from housemaids who've overheard something they weren't meant to. The visit arrives not as a knock, but as the low, deliberate grind of carriage wheels on uneven stone, each turn of the iron rim echoing too slowly to belong to anything benign. You hear the horses before you see them, hooves pressing into the street with the certainty of creatures that belong to someone important, perhaps not noble, but dangerous in a way no title could ever cover. From behind the curtain, you see the gleaming black carriage roll into view, its windows shuttered, its lacquered sides throwing back a slice of afternoon sunlight like a blade. The carriage stops just a little too close to your stoop, not across the street, not angled away for subtlety, but square in front. This isn't a social call. You don't need to see a uniform to feel it. What follows is the silence that seems to spread before something consequential, the sort that dries the mouth and sharpens the ears. You stand quietly, not rushing toward the door, not calling for Ellen, not even reaching for your shawl. There's no gesture that will make this visit more or less what it already is. A moment later, the door knocker falls twice, with a firmness meant to suggest authority, but not urgency. You hear Ellen's steps from the back corridor, brisk but not panicked. She opens the door, and the exchange of voices that follows is low and formal, too quiet to follow, yet clear enough in tone. You remain where you are until you hear her steps again, approaching more slowly this time, her voice calling your name with a caution that tries to mask concern. She doesn't say who it is. She doesn't need to. You descend the staircase without rushing, smoothing your skirts with practiced care as your fingers trace the polished rail. There is power in calmness, and you wear it like perfume, subtle, effective, and impossible to scrub off. As you round the landing and step into view, you see two men waiting just inside the threshold. Neither wears a uniform, but both have the look of people who have never once knocked without reason. One carries a notebook bound in dark leather, edges worn by use, and the other wears gloves he has not removed. Though the weather is mild and the parlor comfortably warm, their eyes follow you, but they do not rise to meet yours immediately. They scan your posture, your hands, your expression. When the one with the notebook finally speaks, his voice is unhurried and practiced, as though your name is one of many on a long list. He introduces neither himself nor his companion. He simply says they're inquiring about a matter of interest, something delicate. Correspondence delivered to this address, recently and perhaps unintentionally. The letter, he says, may contain content that is sensitive. You nod slowly and gesture toward the parlor. Offering them seats, they decline. They remain standing, just inside the doorway, as if this visit were meant to be brief, or at least appear so. You don't press. You ask whether they would like tea, and the man with the gloves responds with a flat, "No, thank you," spoken with the ease of someone who doesn't believe in accepting anything he hasn't asked for. The other man opens his notebook, not to write, but to read. Names, dates, phrases that brush the edges of secrets but never touch them directly. He mentions individuals you recognize only by reputation, men you've never met, but whose names circulate at dinners where the wine flows faster than the truth. He watches you as he reads, not for confirmation, but for reaction. You give him none. Then come the questions. Has anyone recently visited under unusual circumstances? Have any notes arrived without clear origin? Has any gentleman left behind an envelope or item meant for retrieval? You answer with an expression of polite confusion, the one you've perfected for moments exactly like this. You tell them that the house is occasionally visited by friends of friends, and that names are rarely exchanged, especially when intentions are less formal. You smile when you say it, not broadly, but enough to leave room for interpretation. They ask to speak with Ellen. You summon her, watching her face pale slightly as she steps into the room, hands folded tightly at her waist. They question her with the same careful tone. Have there been unexpected deliveries? Has anyone lingered at the door? Or any letters misplaced or opened? She stammers once, then manages a list of recent visitors, a milliner, a dress courier, a man delivering French wine. She doesn't mention the unsigned note from 3 days ago. You're quietly relieved. Or perhaps you're impressed. The man with the gloves glances toward your writing desk, his eyes resting on the blotter for a second too long. He says nothing, but you note the slight tightening of his jaw before he returns his attention to you. They thank Ellen and dismiss her with a nod. She disappears swiftly, closing the door with just enough care to avoid drawing attention to the haste in her step. You're asked if you've received any unusual gifts. Money, jewelry, appointments with no name attached. You reply that gifts, by their nature, are often unaccompanied by receipts. The man with the notebook doesn't smile. He closes the leather cover slowly and replaces it in his coat pocket. Before they leave, the gloved man says something that doesn't sound like a warning, but feels like one. If anything arrives without a name, or if you recall something you've forgotten, someone will return. You nod once more, allowing just enough expression to suggest understanding without consent. He steps back, and the other follows. They leave without glancing behind them. The door shuts. The parlor is silent again, but the silence has changed. It's no longer filled with perfume and music, but something colder. You remain standing for a moment, letting the quiet settle into the walls. The tea on the table is now cold. You don't touch it. You walk to your writing desk and lift the blotter, removing the folded note beneath. You don't need to read it again, but you do, letting your eyes scan the careful script. There's nothing incriminating, nothing overt, but you know the weight of what is not said. You feed it to the fire, watching the paper blacken and curl inward until only the ghost of its edges remains among the ash. That evening, you dress simply. No lace, no bright stones. A muted gown, a modest chignon, earrings no one will remember. You attend a quiet dinner with quiet men, say little, and smile only when spoken to. When you return home, you pull the curtains, but not all the way. You leave them open just enough to let the street lamp cast a thin gold line across the floorboards. You are not frightened, not yet, but you understand the game has shifted. You are no longer simply observed. You have been noted, and once that happens, invisibility becomes harder to wear. So you remain very still, and you wait. The night has lost all urgency now. Everything has already happened. The callers are gone, the appointments have passed, the silks are folded, and the face in the mirror is back to being yours alone. You sit by the fire, not for heat, but for the sound. The last logs crack in their slow collapse, giving off faint, hollow snaps that fall into the room like dropped pins. You don't tend it. It burns down without you. Around you, the house shrinks itself for the night. The warmth retreats from the edges of the hallways. The curtains hang still in the absence of breeze, and the mirrors return nothing but dark suggestions. You've changed out of your gown, and now wear something soft, not quite luxurious, but clean and yours. Slippers, a cotton robe, your hair twisted up in a way no one will see. In this form, you're not anyone's idea of a mistress or a mystery. Just a woman awake too late with nothing left to rehearse. The clocks become the only companions. You've always noticed their lack of coordination. One ticks quickly, as though nervous it might be late. Another ticks lazily, lagging a beat behind. The third, on the mantel, seems most accurate, though you don't know how you'd ever be sure. Their discord used to bother you once. Now it's comforting. They don't match, neither do you. You carry your tea to the window, though it's cold. Outside, the cobblestones glisten faintly from a drizzle that's already passed. No one walks by. The night is emptied of voices and wheels. The city in its gentlest form, exhausted, veiled, and uncurious. In that stillness, you let your body settle, muscles loosening inch by inch, a kind of physical exhale. It's not rest, not yet, but it's what comes before. You think about the dress you wore earlier. It's still hanging on the chair, its hem trailing just slightly onto the rug. The perfume lingers faintly in the room, a trace of your public self refusing to leave with the others. That dress, expensive, borrowed, embroidered by hands you'll never meet, carries in its seams the eyes that watched you tonight. The ones that smiled, calculated, whispered. The ones that lingered too long. You'll wear it again, of course. You always do, until it stops drawing the right attention. Then it will disappear quietly into the wardrobe's back edge, like every other costume you've outlived. You move through the house slowly, not checking locks, not tidying, just pacing through familiar spaces. Each room has its own flavor of quiet. The hall is dry and echoing. The sitting room holds a faint floral note from a vase that needs replacing. Your room has the deepest silence, thick, intimate, layered with breath. It's the only place you don't have to arrange your expression, not even for yourself. The paper on your desk lies untouched, and you're not in the mood to write. There's nothing pressing to record. You already know how the day went. You lived it, and tomorrow will come whether you prepare for it or not. There are letters half written in the drawer. Words you began and couldn't finish. Some were meant to be thank yous. Some were farewells you didn't feel brave enough to send. All of them now feel irrelevant. You'll leave them where they are. Not forgotten, just suspended. One of the clocks chimes the hour. Not loudly, but with a tremble in its tone, like it too hesitated before speaking. You glance at it, more out of habit than interest. Past midnight, the world has quietly shifted from one day to the next. But it doesn't feel like anything has changed. You sit again by the window, pulling your robe tighter around you. The air inside the house has cooled, but not unkindly. It's the kind of cool that makes fabric feel reassuring. You draw your legs up beneath you, fingers laced around your teacup. It's nearly empty now, not even lukewarm, but it's a vessel for your hands, and sometimes that's enough. Your thoughts wander back to moments from earlier in the day, tiny things you didn't notice at the time, the hesitation in a footman's voice, the way someone glanced at you and then quickly away, the envelope that arrived without return. You try to piece them together, but it's not a puzzle with answers. Just fragments, shadows that touch and part. You let them drift away again. For now, it's the stillness you want. You've earned it. The city hums far beneath. Distantly, faintly, a carriage on the next street. The rustle of some bird disturbed on a rooftop. Water dripping into a drain. Each sound like a dot on the map of a sleeping world. You're not quite part of it, but you're not a part either. You exist in the pause between events. In a few hours, The city will wake again. Someone will light the first hearth. The baker will unlock his door. Horses will return to the roads, clattering their impatience. And someone, maybe you, will rise again to be someone else, to perform, to charm, to smile on command. But for now, none of that matters. The lamps are low. The fire has faded to a dull red glow. The robe around your shoulders is heavy with comfort. Your breath slows. You're not asleep, not quite, but you're close enough that the line between thought and dream starts to blur. And somewhere in that haze, you remember a simpler kind of silence. One not broken by clocks or footsteps or notes slipped under the door. Just quiet, safe, even if fleeting. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen. And soon we'll let everything else fade. But not just yet. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight. From the creaking staircases of London's brothels to the golden salons of Parisian courtesans. From the velvet-draped underground parlors to the secret apartments where silence was part of the bargain. A long, quiet walk through the lives lived behind drawn curtains and locked doors, where survival wore curfew and every whisper had its price. If you're still awake, thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. And if you drifted off somewhere between the echo of clicking heels and the ticking of mismatched clocks, that's perfectly fine too. That's kind of the whole point. If you enjoyed this slower, sleep-friendly journey into history, feel free to like the video and subscribe for more. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it was when you pressed play. It's always lovely seeing where in the world these stories find their way. For now, I'll let the parlors go dark, the silk gowns be folded away, and the soft hush of gaslight fade into the stillness. Sleep well, and I'll see you next time.